uh, coach.
Yeah, it's because he has some background in coaching, and so the idea is like, oh, put me in coach. That's kind of the concept.
Terrible. It starts in 5 minutes. We're gonna do a listen in here. We can't show it because Twitch will ban us. But we're gonna do live listen in and react. Roland Sot says you should stream. I think Lactoid is gonna stream.
I am streaming. Yep, it just took me a little bit to get the cover, so nothing bad happens.
You know who else is also streaming? Donald Trump.
That's wild. I didn't know he had a Twitch account for a long time until like 2 days ago, or yeah, Monday
I like
was it
it.
Monday?
I like the
Yesterday.
don't tread on me. That's a good touch.
Yeah, that's what I went for. You got the American flag. I got the other
Yeah,
American flag.
yeah, they're American flag.
I had to adjust it. Those are the tops a little bit
You know,
curved,
I
but
saw someone share the other day that was racist.
no, yeah, a lot of like remember the OK symbol that was deemed to be a white supremacist symbol. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of things are being claimed to be racist. So like the Betsy Ross flag, for example, which is the flag that I have behind me. It's not actually the official current American flag. It's
Right.
the Betsy Ross antique flag. Rothbardi is saying I'm not so sure it's bannable anymore. I am not going to risk that, unfortunately. Uh, I've looked into this on Reddit. Reddit saying it's bannable, so
What is which one?
showing the actual debate.
Yeah. You can't show it, but you can't listen to it.
Weeks before Election Day.
We still got 4 minutes. Okay. But yeah, I don't know why they're doing this. They're letting everybody else reshare it. I don't like. You could like. I don't understand why. Um, they're so strict on this. Well, I guess they're getting copyright strikes from CBS. I guess Fox and all these other ones pay, but C-SPAN is showing it.
Yeah, I honestly have like I don't like the idea that a actual like vice presidential debate, something that concerns the nation, is like you're not allowed to restream it. I don't know. I this might go back to the intellectual property discussion that we've had before. We might have an issue with.
Oh yeah, you love the no intellectual property, right?
No, I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical of intellectual property shit. Did you see also the Iranian attack today?
I saw that, and so what? We're gonna get a forefront war now.
No casualties, so I don't know. I don't know what the
We
reaction
know
is going to
one
be.
casualty. One casualty.
Palestinian guy, yeah.
A Palestinian guy. Big win, Iran. You did good. I hope that they go in there and just parking lot. Like I think it's about time Israel maybe got a new state called South Lebanon.
Yeah, yeah. I never know like how open I can be about like incendiary statements sometimes about that shit, but especially like around Ali. But no, I hear you. I think that the fact there's no casualties, I think, is going to mitigate Israel's response. But the fact that this was a test run, right? What was it? Over 200 missiles to see if they can
And some at
overwhelm.
and some at hypersonic speed.
Yeah, and the idea was, can we overwhelm the Iron Dome or not? And I think they've demonstrated that they can to some degree, which I think Israel is going to see as a threat to its very existence at this point.
Well, they're about to put out that new dome system too. What is it? That's something Heska 3 or something. I don't remember. I was just seeing that, but like the thing with Iran is getting real time practice with the rocketry in Ukraine. You know, and they're taking the lessons they're learning and they're bringing it back home. And that's really what's been happening with their proxies. It's just like a live test bed. I think that's kind of concerning.
No, I agree. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back.
All right, you got 1 minute before we start here. It looks like he is live though. I just looked. I just followed. Opened this thing up. ICBM. I'm not sure if they were technically ICBM. I'm trying to respond to both chats.
All right, made it back.
Nice. All right.
And the aftermath, the recovery continues in the wake of Hurricane.
Okay, nobody's got it live yet. All right.
Visited and or will be visited.
Did you see Biden today also said there's no more aid to give to the hurricane?
No, what?
Yeah, he said we've given them everything we can give. That's a direct quote today. And then what's crazy is we're about to get, yeah, which is really bad considering he's about to give what, $20 billion to Ukraine on Friday. I want to support the Ukraine war, but like, bro, we just took a hurricane. Time to, maybe think about priorities here. I don't know. That's it's a pretty bad political move.
Yeah, no, not a good thing to say, but no, I agree that Ukraine needs to. We gotta figure out how to end that fucking war. We can't be in another forever war again. We can't.
Well, it looks
Afghanistan 2.0.
Oh, here we go. It's live.
United States. Democratic Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota and Republican Senator J.D.
All right,
Vance
let's see how this
of
goes.
Ohio. Now, this is likely the
Volume's
final
good.
debate of this election cycle, and voting is already underway in 20 states. CBS News polling shows this remains a race either presidential candidate could win. The CBS News vice presidential debate starts now.
Fight for every single vote, and we're going to take this country back.
And we are ready to continue to build the future together.
We're going to turn this whole country red with President Donald J. Trump's leadership.
You know what's at the end of this little journey? Kamala Harris as the next president of the United States.
This is a CBS News special, live from CBS News headquarters in New York. America decides.
All right, get your notepads out. Be ready to fact check, because the moderators for sure they're not gonna fucking do it. So.
Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for joining us.
They might fact check somebody.
CBS News
Yeah, they might.
presidential
One
debate.
person, yeah.
We want to welcome our viewers on CBS, on other networks here and around the world. We have a consequential night ahead, and our focus is the issues that matter to you, the voter. Let's introduce the candidates. Minnesota's Democratic Governor Tim Walz and Ohio's Republican Senator J.D. Vance.
I think you're right about the no audience is going to help Vance a lot.
I think it is. They both look so fucking dorky, though. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm Margaret Brennan. In order to have a thoughtful and civil debate, these are the
This is just weird. Does Vance look like a better-looking version of Trump's kid?
Will be directed at one candidate.
No,
Kind of.
No, did he?
Yeah, a little bit chunkier, but better looking. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got the girl eyelashes, though,
We'll get another
for sure.
minute to make further.
Hey, that's a good thing.
With an additional 1 minute each at the discretion of the moderator. The primary role of the moderators is to facilitate the debate between the candidates, enforce the rules, and provide
And
the
fact
candidates
check.
the opportunity to fact-check claims.
Yeah, they said it.
News reserves the right
Let's.
to mute the candidates.
What do you think the likelihood
microphones
is they
to
fact
maintain
checked
decorum.
Walz on
We have not
anything?
shared the
What do you think?
questions or topics with the campaigns.
I gotta be
The stage
low.
is set.
It's gotta be low. Do you think they actually mute
Thank
them?
you for
Because it's
joining
the
us.
vice president. It's not a
Let's
former
get
president.
started. Tonight, our country is facing
I don't think they're gonna
several
mute.
unfolding crises. The Middle East is on the brink
It was
of
bad-
war.
bad
Americans
content
are
to mute 'em.
suffering from the catastrophic impact of Hurricane Helene, and now a labor strike as 25,000 dock workers from
Oh, not
Texas
Iran
are
first.
picketing. We're going to begin tonight with the Middle East. Margaret. Thank you, Nora. Earlier today, Iran launched its largest attack yet on Israel, but that attack failed, thanks to joint U.S. and Israeli defensive action. President Biden has deployed more than 40,000 U.S. military personnel and assets to that region over the past year to try to prevent a regional war. Iran is weakened, but the U.S. still considers it the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and it has drastically reduced the time it would take to develop a nuclear weapon. It is down now to 1 or 2 weeks' time. Governor Walz, if you were the final
1 or 2
voice
weeks.
in the Situation Room, would you support
That's
or
wild.
oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, and thank you for those joining.
come from a
home
middle-class
tonight.
family.
Let's keep in mind where this started. October 7th, Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners. Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental. Getting its hostages back, fundamental, and ending the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. But the expansion of
choppy
Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental.
Yeah, he looks
necessity
nervous
for the United States to have the steady leadership there. You saw it experienced today, where along with our Israeli partners and our coalition, able to stop the incoming attack. But what's fundamental here is
I think this is their
steady
weakest this
leadership
year.
is going to matter. It's clear, and the world saw it on that debate stage a few weeks ago. A nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump talking about
Vance
crowd
could do well,
sizes
right,
is
if
not
he
what we
nails
need
this
in
question.
this
He could get a
moment.
really good start.
But it's not just that. It's those that were closest to Donald Trump that understand how dangerous he is when the world is this dangerous. His chief of staff, John Kelly, said that he was the most flawed human being he'd ever met. And both of his secretaries of defense and his national security advisors said he should be nowhere near the White House. Now, the person closest to them, Donald Trump, said he's unfit for the highest office. That was Senator
he's
Vance.
so choppy.
What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen
I'm
steady leadership.
surprised.
We've seen a calmness that is able to draw on the coalitions to bring them together. Understanding that our allies matter. When our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards North Korea, when we start to see that type of fickleness around holding the coalitions together, we will stay committed. And as the vice president said today we will protect our forces and our allied forces, and there will be consequences.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, the same question. Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
So, Margaret, I want to answer the question. First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting the debate. And thanks, most importantly, to the American people who are watching this evening and caring enough about this country to pay attention to this vice presidential debate. I want to answer the question, but I want to actually give an introduction to myself a little bit, because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are. I was raised in a working-class family. My mother required...
He brought up the family. No!
Social Security help to raise me, and she raised me
just the wrong guy.
My own mother struggled with addiction for a big chunk of my early life. I went to college on the GI Bill after I enlisted in the Marine Corps and served in Iraq. And so I stand here asking to be your vice president with extraordinary gratitude for this country, for the American dream that made it possible for me to live my dreams.
He's a much more confident speaker, though, for sure.
I know that a lot of you are worried about
he's coming off much more charismatic, but he's not answering the question.
I want to try to convince you tonight over the next
almost
90
intentionally,
minutes,
though, right?
that if we get better leadership in the
Well,
White
of course.
House, if we get Donald Trump back in the White House, the American dream is going to be attainable once again. Now, to answer this particular question, we have to remember that as much as Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration. What do they use that money for? They use it to buy weapons that they're now launching against our allies, and God forbid, potentially launching against the United States as well. Donald Trump recognized that for people to fear the United States, you needed peace through strength. They needed to recognize that if they got out of line, the United States global leadership would put stability and peace back in the world. Now, you asked about a preemptive strike, Margaret, and I want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe, and we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. I think that's the right approach to take with the Israel question.
Thank you, Senator.
That was good.
That was good.
Damn, that was good.
It was not nearly as choppy. I don't like the working class family meme, though.
We'll sometimes hear a revisionist history, but when Donald Trump was in office, it was Donald Trump who we had a coalition of nations that had boxed Iran's nuclear program in, the inability to advance it. Donald Trump pulled that program and put nothing else in its place. So Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon than they were before because of Donald Trump's fickle leadership. And when Iran shot down an American aircraft in international airspace,
that's why they did the
tweeted,
2-week thing.
because that's the standard diplomacy of Donald Trump. And when Iranian missiles did fall near U.S. troops and they received traumatic brain injuries, Donald Trump wrote it off as headaches. Look, our allies understand that Donald Trump is fickle. He will go to whoever has the most flattery or where it makes sense to him. Steady leadership like you witnessed today, like you witnessed in April. Both Iranian attacks were repelled. Our coalition is strong, and we need the steady leadership that Kamala Harris is providing.
Senator Vance, the U.S. did have a diplomatic deal with Iran to temporarily pause parts of its nuclear program, and President Trump did exit that deal. He recently said, just 5 days ago, the U.S. must now make a diplomatic deal with Iran because the consequences are impossible. Did he make a mistake? You have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, Margaret, diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Walz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is as close to a nuclear
he's going to get him
as they have ever been. And Governor Walz, you blame Donald Trump, who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years. And the answer is your running mate, not mine. Donald Trump consistently made the world more secure. Now,
that was good.
The sequence of events that led us to where we are right now, and you can't.
Is this my network or yours?
I appreciate Governor Walz bringing up.
I think it's yours. I'm not having any choppiness.
Israel. It was during the administration of Kamala Harris. So Governor Walz can criticize Donald Trump's tweets, but effective, smart diplomacy and peace through strength is how you bring stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already done it once before. Ask yourself at home, when was the last time, I'm 40 years old, when was the last time that an American president didn't have a major conflict break out? The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald Trump was president.
Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. Nora?
Margaret, thank you. Let's
what was that?
Hurricane
you got a lot to get to.
The storm could become one of the deadliest on record. More than
160
people are dead, and hundreds.
I think he nailed the response though, saying Biden's been president for the last 3.5 years.
Makes these hurricanes
with Kamala
larger.
Yeah, I mean, there should be a way to emphasize that, though,
more
while
deadly
also
because of the historic rainfall. Senator Vance, according to CBS News polling, 7 in 10 Americans and more than 60% of Republicans under the age of 45 favor the U.S. taking steps to try and reduce climate change. Senator, what responsibility would the Trump administration have to try and reduce the impact of climate change? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Sure.
Hurricane,
so let's start with the hurricane, because it's an unbelievable, unspeakable human tragedy. I just saw today, actually, a photograph of 2 grandparents on a roof with a 6-year-old child, and it was the last photograph ever taken of them because the roof collapsed and those innocent people lost their lives. And I'm sure Governor Walz joins me in saying our hearts go out to those innocent people, our prayers go out to them, and we want as robust and aggressive,
a lot more cordial than the other debates,
we can get to save as many lives as possible, and then, of course, afterwards, to help the people in those communities rebuild. I mean, these are communities that I love. Some of them I know very personally in Appalachia, all across the Southeast. They need their government to do their job, and I commit that when Donald Trump is president again, the government will put the citizens of this country first when they suffer from a disaster. Now, Nora, you asked about climate change. I think this is a very important issue. Look, a lot of people are justifiably worried about all these crazy weather patterns. I think it's important for us, first of all, to say Donald Trump and I support clean air, clean water. We want the environment to be cleaner and safer. But one of the things that I've noticed some of our Democratic friends talking a lot about is a concern about carbon emissions, this idea that carbon emissions drives all of the climate change. Well, let's just say that's true, just for the sake of argument, so we're not arguing about weird science. Let's just say that's true. Well, if you believe
not arguing about weird science.
The answer is that you'd want to reshore as much American manufacturing as possible, and you'd want to produce as much energy as possible in the United States of America, because we're the cleanest economy in the entire world. What have Kamala Harris's policies actually led to? More energy production in China, more manufacturing overseas, more doing business in some of the dirtiest parts of the entire world. And when I say that, I mean the amount of carbon emissions they're doing per unit of economic output. So if we actually care about getting cleaner air and cleaner water, the best thing to do is to double down and invest in American workers and the American people. And unfortunately, Kamala Harris has done exactly the opposite.
Governor Walz, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Well, we got close to an agreement because all those things are happening. Look, first of all, it is a horrific tragedy with this hurricane, and my heart goes out to the folks that are down there in contact with the governors. I serve as co-chair of the Council of Governors as we work together on these emergency managements. Governors know no partisanship. They work together so all of the governors and the emergency responders are on the ground. Those happen on the front end. The federal government comes in, makes sure they're there that we recover, but we're still in that phase where we need to make sure that they're staying there, staying focused. Now, look, coming back to the climate change issue, there's no doubt this thing roared onto the scene faster and stronger than anything we've seen. Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past. Donald Trump called it a hoax and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in. What we've seen out of the Harris administration now, the Biden-Harris administration, is we've seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in global history that we've seen in the Inflation Reduction Act, has created jobs all across the country. 2,000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio, taking the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country. The largest solar manufacturing plant in North America sits in Minnesota. But my farmers know climate change is real. They've seen 500-year droughts, 500-year floods back to back. But what they're doing is adapting, and this has allowed them to tell me, look, I harvest corn, I harvest soybean, and I harvest wind. We are producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have. We're also producing more clean energy. So the solution for us is to continue to move forward, that climate change is real. Reducing our impact is absolutely critical, but this is not a false choice. You can do that at the same time you're creating the jobs that we're seeing all across the country. That's exactly what this administration has done. We are seeing us becoming an energy superpower for the future, not just the current. And that's what absolutely makes sense. And then we start thinking about how do we mitigate these disasters.
Thank you. Senator, I want to give you an opportunity to respond there. The governor mentioned that President Trump has called climate change a hoax. Do you agree?
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, in particular Kamala Harris and her leadership, if they really believe that climate change is serious, what they would be doing is more manufacturing and more energy production in the United States of America, and that's not what they're doing. So clearly, Kamala Harris herself doesn't believe her own rhetoric on this. If she did,
Uno reverse
she would actually agree
card.
with Donald Trump's.
Yeah, I like that. That's good.
Something Governor Walz said.
He's doing really good
to touch upon, because when we talk
Like,
about
he's a good communicator,
energy,
like a one-on-one
I think
kind of
that's a
communicator.
slogan that often the Democrats will use here. And I'm talking, of course,
That
about
weird line
democratic
played well, I
leadership.
think, too.
And the real issue is that if you're spending hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars of American taxpayer money on solar panels that are made in China, number one, you're going to make the economy dirtier. We should be making more of those solar panels here in the United States of America. Some of them are, Tim, but a lot of them are being made overseas in China, especially the components that go into those solar panels. So if you really want to make the environment cleaner, you've got to invest in more energy production. We haven't built a nuclear facility, I think, one in the past 40 years.
Senator.
Natural gas, we got to invest
Nuclear,
more.
hammer
Kamala
nuclear.
Harris has done the opposite. That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing
Senator,
worse
your
by the
time
climate.
is up.
Nuclear
Governor,
energy
would you
is
like to
something
respond?
that like Dems are just bad on for
We're
no
producing
reason.
more natural gas than we ever have. There's no moratorium on that. We're producing more oil. But the folks know, and like I said, again, these are not liberal folks. These are not folks that are Green New Deal folks. These are farmers that have been drought one year, massive flooding the next year. They understand that it makes sense. Look, our number one export cannot be topsoil from erosion from these massive storms. We saw it in Minnesota this summer. And thinking about how do we respond to that, we're thinking ahead on this. And what Kamala Harris has been able to do in Minnesota, we're starting to weatherproof some of these things. The infrastructure law that was passed allows us to think about—
How do you
mitigation
weatherproof
in the
a hurricane?
future. How do we make sure that we're protecting by burying our power lines? How do we make sure that we're
A great
protecting
big wall,
lakefronts
Gibbs.
and things that we're seeing more and more of? But to
Nuke
call
'em.
it a hoax and to take the oil company executives to Mar-a-Lago, say, give me money for my campaign, and I'll let you do whatever you want. We can be smarter about that, and an all-above energy policy is exactly what she's doing, creating those jobs right here.
Governor, your time is up. The overwhelming consensus among scientists is that the Earth's climate is warming at an unprecedented rate. Margaret?
Thank you, Nora. We're going to turn now to immigration. The crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border consistently ranks
Yeah, here
as
we
one
go.
of the top issue for American voters. Senator Vance, your campaign is pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work? For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their children who
not
were
say
born
yes.
on U.S. soil? You have 2 minutes.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country. I had a mother who struggled with opioid addiction and has gotten clean. I don't want people who are struggling with addiction to be deprived of their second chance because Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels. So you've got to stop the bleeding. You've got to re-implement Donald Trump's border policies, build the wall, re-implement deportations. And that gets me to your point, Margaret, about what do we actually do? So we've got 25 million illegal aliens who are here in the country. What do we do with them? I think the first thing that we do is we start with the criminal migrants. About 1 million of those people have committed some form of crime in addition to crossing the border illegally. I think you start with deportations on those folks. And then I think you make it harder for illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American workers. A lot of people will go home if they can't work for less than minimum wage in our own country. And by the way, that'll be really good for our workers who just want to earn a fair wage for doing a good day's work. And the final point, Margaret, is you ask about family separation. Right now in this country, Margaret, we have 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has effectively lost. Some of them have been sex trafficked. Some of them hopefully are at homes with their families. Some of them have been used as drug trafficking mules. The real family separation policy in this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris's wide open southern border. And I'd ask my fellow Americans to remember when she came into office, she said she was going to do this. Real leadership would be saying, you know what, I screwed up. We're going to go back to Donald Trump's border policies. I wish that she would do that. It would be good for all of us.
Governor, do you care to respond to any of those
that was a
specific
nuke he just dropped on him,
including that the vice president is?
I think a lot of people just don't know like how well J.D. Vance can speak.
Using kids as drug mules, among other things, regarding children.
The drug mule is not true, but I will say about this, about the fentanyl.
It's true.
This is a crisis of this, the opioid crisis. And the good news on this is the last 12 months saw the largest decrease in opioid deaths in our nation's history. 30% decrease in Ohio, but there's still more work to do. But let's go back to this on immigration. Kamala Harris was the Attorney General of the largest state and a border state in California. She's the only person in this race who prosecuted transnational gangs for human trafficking and drug
and pot dealers.
But look, we all want to solve this. Most of us want to solve this, and that is the United States Congress. That's the Border Patrol agents. That's the Chamber of Commerce. That's most Americans out here. That's why we had the fairest and the toughest bill on immigration that this nation's seen. It was crafted by a conservative senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford. I know him. He's super conservative, but he's a man of principle, wants to get it done. Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation. The Border Patrol said, this is what we need in here. These are the experts. And the Chamber of Commerce and the Wall Street Journal said, pass this thing. Kamala Harris helped get there. 1,500 new border agents, detection for drugs, DOJ money to speed up these the adjudications on this, just what America wants. But as soon as I was getting ready to pass and actually tackle this, Donald Trump said no, told them to vote against it because it gives him a campaign issue. It gives him what would Donald Trump talk about if we actually did some of these things? And they need to be done by the legislature. You can't just do this through the executive branch. So look, we have the options to do this. Donald Trump had 4 years. He had 4 years to do this. And he promised you, America, how easy it would be. I'll build you a big, beautiful wall, and Mexico will pay for it. Less than 2% of that wall got built, and Mexico didn't pay a dime. But here we are again, 9 years after he came down that escalator, dehumanizing people and telling them what he was going to do. As far as the deportation plan, at one point, Senator Vance said it was so unworkable to be laughable. So that's where we're at. Pass the bill, she'll sign it.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, the question was, will you separate parents from their children, even if their kids are U.S. citizens? You have 1 minute.
Margaret, my point is that we already have massive child separations thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. And I didn't accuse Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in this country. And we know that they use children as drug mules, and it is a disgrace, and it has to stop. Look, I think what Tim said just doesn't pass the smell test. For 3 years, Kamala Harris went out bragging that she was Donald Trump's border policy.
He's dodging the question, though, because he cannot answer that question. That is a nightmare question.
But he's redirecting perfectly.
She's running for president, or a few months before, she says that somehow she got religion and cared a lot about a piece of legislation. The only thing that she did when she became the vice president, when she became the appointed border czar, was to undo 94 Donald Trump executive actions that opened the border. This problem is leading to massive problems in the United States of America. Parents who can't afford health care, school schools that are overwhelmed. It's got to stop, and it will when Donald Trump is president again.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, what about our CBS News polling, which does show that a majority of Americans, more than 50%, support mass deportations?
Look, we fix this issue with a bill that is necessary, but the issue on this is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize it. And we saw this, and Senator Vance, and it surprises me.
No, you're wrong, America.
Talking about and saying, I will create stories to bring attention to this. That vilified a large number of people who were here legally in the community of Springfield. The Republican governor said, it's not true, don't do it. There's consequences for this. There's consequences. We could come together. Senator Langford did it. We could come together and solve this if we didn't let Donald Trump continue to make it an issue. And the consequences in Springfield were the governor had to send state law enforcement to escort kindergartners to school. I believe Senator Vance wants to solve this, but by standing with Donald Trump and not working together to find a solution, it becomes a talking point. And when it becomes a talking point like this, we dehumanize and villainize other human beings.
Tim,
Governor, your time is up. Senator, I'll give you 1 minute, but let me just ask you the question first. The governor has made the point, and I think as a sitting lawmaker, you know that Congress controls the purse strings and any funding. So you have said repeatedly that Donald Trump would, through executive action, solve this. Do you disagree that Congress controls the purse strings and would need to support many of the changes that you would actually want to implement? You have 1 minute.
Look, Margaret, first of all, the gross majority of what we need to do at the southern border is just empowering law enforcement to do their job. I've been to the southern border more than our borders are. Kamala Harris has been, and it's actually heartbreaking because the Border Patrol agents, they just want to be empowered to do their job. Of course, additional resources would help, but most of this is about the president and the vice president empowering our law enforcement to say, if you try to come across the border illegally, you've got to stay in Mexico, you've got to go back through proper channels. Now, Governor Walz brought up the community of Springfield, and he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed, you've got hospitals that are overwhelmed, you've got housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans for scarce homes. The people that I'm most worried about in Springfield, Ohio, are the American citizens who had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris's open border. It is a disgrace, Tim, and I actually I agree with you. I think you want to solve this problem, but I don't think that Kamala Harris does.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, you have 1 minute to respond.
They're both like complimenting each other while shitting on their president.
Asked for the bill. They helped craft it.
That's
the
good.
Ones that supported it. That's because they know we need to do this. Look, this issue of continuing to bring this up, of not dealing with it, of blaming migrants for everything. On housing, we could talk a little bit about Wall Street speculators buying up housing and making them less affordable, but it becomes a blame. Look, this bill also gives the money necessary to adjudicate. I agree, it should not take 7 years for an asylum claim to be done. This bill gets it done in 90 days. Then you start to make a difference in this, and you start to adhere to what we know, American principles. Look, I don't talk about my faith a lot, but Matthew 25:40 talks about, to the least amongst us you do unto me. I think that's...
Oh, yeah, now he's the Christian.
They simply want order to it. This bill does it. It's funded. It's supported by the people who do it, and it lets us keep our dignity about how we treat other people.
Thank you, Governor. And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
I think it's important because
we're going to turn out of the economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
the rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important.
Oh, here we go.
Going on.
Oh,
so there's an application.
Oh, nice.
One app where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own leadership.
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
That was a dunk.
Since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that
oh, they cut their mics.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut.
Damn.
We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining.
CBS is not dicking around.
Nora.
They're like, we're not playing these games.
Economy is a top concern for voters. Each of your campaigns has released an economic plan. So let's.
That was good. Vance got him back there.
Governor Walz, Vice President Harris unveiled a plan that includes billions in tax credits for manufacturing, housing, and a renewed child tax credit. The Wharton School says your proposals will increase the nation's deficit by $1.2 trillion. How would you pay for that without ballooning the deficit? Governor, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. And Kamala Harris and I do believe in the middle class because that's where we come from. We both grew up in that. We understand. So those of you out there
middle class,
tonight, you're hearing a lot of stuff back and forth, and it's good. It's healthy. That's what this is supposed to happen. You should be listening. How's this going to impact me? The bold forward plan that Kamala Harris put out there is talking about this housing issue. The one thing is there's 3 million new houses proposed under this plan with down payment assistance on the front end to get you in a house. A house is much more than just an asset to be traded somewhere. It's foundational to where you're at. And then making sure that the things you buy every day, whether they be prescription drugs or other things, that there's fairness in that. Look, the $35 insulin is a good thing, but it costs $5 to make insulin. They were charging $800 before this law went into effect. As far as the housing goes, I've seen it in Minnesota. 12% more houses in Minneapolis, prices went down on rent 4%. It's working. And then making sure tax cuts go to the middle class. $6,000 child tax credit, we have one in Minnesota, reduces childhood poverty by 1/3. We save money in the long run, and we do the right thing for families. And then getting businesses off the ground. The law as it stands right now is $5,000 tax credit for small business, increasing that to $50,000. Now, this is a philosophical difference between us. Donald Trump made a promise, and I'll give you this. He kept it. He took folks to Mar-a-Lago. He said, you're rich as hell, I'm going to give you a tax cut. He gave the tax cuts that predominantly went to the top class. What happened there was an $8 trillion increase in the national debt, the largest ever. Now he's proposing a 20% consumption or sales tax on everything we bring in. Everyone agrees, including businesses, it would be destabilizing it, it would increase inflation and potentially lead to a recession. Look, this is simple for you. Where are we going? Kamala Harris has said to do the things she wants to do, we'll just ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share. When you do that, our system works best, more people are participating in it, and folks have the things that they need.
Senator, I want to give you a moment to respond on that. But similarly, the Wharton School has done an analysis of the Trump plan and says it would increase the nation's deficit by $5.8 trillion. My question is the same for you. How do you pay for all that without ballooning the deficit? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear a lot from Tim Walz this evening, and you just heard it in the answer, a lot of what Kamala Harris proposes to do. And some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Here's what you won't hear, is that Kamala Harris has already done it. Because she's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies, and what she's actually done instead is drive the cost of food higher by 25%, drive the cost of housing higher by about 60%, open the American southern border and make middle-class life unaffordable for a large number of Americans. If Kamala Harris has such great plans for how to address middle-class problems, then she ought to do them now. Not when asking for a promotion, but in the job the American people gave her 3.5 years ago. And the fact that she isn't tells you a lot about how much you can trust her actual plans. Now, Donald Trump's economic plan is not just a plan, but it's also a record. A lot of those same economists attack Donald Trump's plans, and they have PhDs, but they don't have common sense and they don't have wisdom. Because Donald Trump's economic policies delivered the highest take-home pay in a generation in this country, 1.5% inflation, and to boot, peace and security all over the world. So when people say that Donald Trump's economic plan doesn't make sense, I say look at the record. He delivered rising take-home pay for American workers. Now, Tim admirably admits that they want to undo the Trump tax cuts. But if you look at what was so different about Donald Trump's tax cuts, even from previous Republican tax cut plans, is that a lot of those resources went to giving more take-home pay to middle-class and working-class Americans. It was passed in 2017, and you saw an American economic boom unlike we've seen in a generation in this country. That is a record that I'm proud to run on.
He needs to talk about no tax on tips and overtime. He needs to hammer
so
that.
You can afford to live the American dream again. I know a lot of you are struggling. I know a lot of you are worried about paying the bills. It's going to stop when Donald Trump brings back common sense to this country.
Governor, do you want to respond to that? What has
a little bit of a slip there at the end.
Yeah, well, Kamala Harris'
a little bit.
one was Donald Trump's failure on COVID that led to the collapse of our economy. We were already before COVID in a manufacturing recession, but 10 million people out of work, largest percentage since the Great Depression. 9 million jobs closed on that. That was day one. Whether it was the Infrastructure Act or other things we moved. Now, you made a question about experts, said this. I've made a note of this. Economists can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted. National security folks can't be trusted.
Got notes?
Look,
notes are allowed this one?
President, you don't have all the answers. Donald
Maybe.
Trump believes
I just don't know why. I mean,
the
JD
thing
needs
is
to
this.
focus on
If
the
you need
fucking
heart surgery,
the no tax on
listen to
tips,
the
no
people at
tax
the
on
Mayo Clinic
overtime.
in Rochester, Minnesota, not
And
Donald
also
Trump.
Kamala's
And the same
fucking
thing
rent
goes with
control.
this.
Why isn't
And
he
I
talking
ask
about
you
that?
out there, teachers,
Price control,
nurses, truck
price
drivers,
control,
whatever.
Soviet-style bread
How
lines.
is it
That's
fair
a
that you're
line
paying
they
your
need to
taxes
Yeah, I
every
know,
year?
seriously.
And Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years. In the last year as president. That's what's wrong with the system. There's a way around it, and he's bragged about that. We're just asking for fairness in it, and that's all you want.
You have a minute.
Governor, you say trust the experts. But those same experts for 40 years said that if we
Rolling
shipped our
Stone says
manufacturing base
not
off
a
to China,
deficit question.
we get cheaper goods. They lied about that. They said if we shipped our industrial base off to other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere, it would make the middle class stronger. They were wrong about that. They were wrong about the idea that if we made America less self-reliant, less productive in our own nation, that it would somehow make us better off, and they were wrong about it. And for the first time in a generation, Donald Trump had the wisdom and the courage to say to that bipartisan consensus, we're not doing it anymore. We're bringing American manufacturing back. We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make more of our own stuff. And this isn't just an economic issue. I mean, I've got 3 beautiful little kids at home, 7, 4, and 2, and I love them very much, and I hope they're in bed right now. But look, so many of the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that we put in the bodies of
Daddy's
our children
watching.
are
You're from the
manufactured
stage.
by nations that hate us. This has to stop, and we're not going to stop it by listening to experts. We're going to stop it by listening to common sense wisdom, which is what Donald Trump governed on.
Senator, your time is up. Governor Walz, can you address that? I mean, voters say they trust Donald Trump on the economy more. Why?
Well, if you're listening tonight and you want billionaires to get tax cuts, you heard what the numbers were. Look, I'm a union guy on this. I'm not a guy who wanted to ship things overseas, but I understand that, look, we produce soybeans and corn. We need to have fair trading partners. That's something that we believe in. I think the thing that most concerns me on this is...
Did you just say, but
Trump
like
was
F
the
you to
guy
the unions?
who created the largest trade deficit in American history with China. So the rhetoric is good. Much of what the senator said right there, I'm in agreement with him on this. I watched it happen too. I watched it to my communities, and we talked about that. But we had people undercutting the right to collectively bargain. We had right to work states made it more difficult. We had companies that were willing to ship it over, and we saw people profit. Folks that are venture capital in some cases, putting money into companies that were overseas. We're in agreement that we bring those home. The issue is Donald Trump is talking about it. Kamala Harris has a record, 250,000 more manufacturing jobs just out of the IRA.
May I respond to that?
Yes.
So appreciate that. So if you notice, what Governor Walz just did is he said, first of all, Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed up, he said, well, Donald Trump didn't do nearly as good of a job as the statistics
that's a
show
gross generalization.
that he did. So what Tim Walz is doing, and I honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here, because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did. And then you simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens. I was raised by a woman who would sometimes go into medical debt so that she could put food on the table in our household. I know what it's like to not be able to afford the things that you need to afford. We can do so much better. To all of you watching, we can get back to an America that's affordable again. We just got to get back to common sense economic principles.
I hope we have a conversation on health care then.
Senator, Governor.
Please.
Thank you. Margaret?
We have a lot to get to.
He's like, shit.
Gentlemen, on many topics. But right now, I want to talk about personal qualifications. The vice president is often the last.
I don't know why he'd want to go over that. That was clearly a setup for him, like leaving that little, oh, my mom went into debt thing.
No, I'm maintaining he should have brought up the tax shit. That was an economy question.
I agree. I think that the
Tiananmen Square protests in the spring.
That was
of
it's a trap.
But Minnesota
that he's laid
Public
right
Radio
there.
and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia.
Who knows if the chance to spring it will come up later? I don't know.
Can you explain that discrepancy?
Yeah, well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska.
Small rural, working class, middle class.
Town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on. And I'm
He's just
proud
like
of that
us.
service. I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill.
More
to
successful.
become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now, look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits. And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything, many times I will talk.
Wasn't this a question about China?
Caught up in the rhetoric, but being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I know a lot about China.
Bro, it's because the CCP stuff came out.
That Donald Trump should have come on.
Like, you got to, I'll see if I can find this.
I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about.
Now we're back to China.
I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community. And then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said.
Wow,
so
that was a fail.
Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Thank you, Governor.
Ooh.
Senator Vance, in 2016, you called your running mate, Donald Trump, unfit for the nation's highest office, and you said he could be America's Hitler. I know you've been asked many times, and you've said you regret those comments and explained you then voted for Donald Trump in 2020. But the Washington Post reported new messages last week in which you also disparaged Trump's economic record while he was president, writing to someone in 2020, quote, Trump thoroughly failed to deliver his economic populism. You're now his running mate, and you've shifted many of your policy stances to align with his. If you become vice president, why should Americans trust that you will give Donald Trump the advice he needs to hear and not just the advice he wants to hear? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Margaret, because I've always been open. And sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure southern border, a lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver on. And yeah, when you screw up, when you misspeak, when you get something wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be honest with the American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American people where I come down on the issues and what changed. Now, you pointed out the messages from 2020. Margaret, I've been extremely consistent that I think there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump administration the first round if Congress was doing its job. I strongly believe, and I've been a United States Senator, that Congress is not just a high-class debating society. It's not just a forum for senators and congressmen to whine about problems. It's a forum to govern. So there were a lot of things on the border, on tariffs, for example, where I think that we could have done so much more if the Republican Congress and the Democrats in Congress had been a little bit better about how they govern the country. They were so obsessed with impeaching Donald Trump, they couldn't actually govern. And I want to talk about this tariff issue in particular, Margaret, because Tim just accused this of being a national sales tax. Look, the one thing And you're probably surprised to hear me praising Joe Biden, but the one thing that Joe Biden did is he continued some of the Trump tariffs that protected American manufacturing jobs. And it's the one issue, the most pro-worker part of the Biden administration, it's the one issue where Kamala Harris has run away from Joe Biden's record. Think about this. If you're trying to employ slave laborers in China at $3 a day, you're going to do that and undercut the wages of American workers unless our country stands up for itself and says, you're not accessing our markets unless you're paying middle-class Americans a fair wage.
Senator, your time is up. Nora?
Thank you. Now to the issue of reproductive rights. Governor Walz, after Roe versus
J.D. Vance can't hammer him on this.
Signed a bill into law that made Minnesota one of the least restrictive states in the nation when it comes to abortion.
They're way better than their
little President Trump said in the
question thing they did right there, where they ask them a hard question on each other.
Quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says, but look.
That is what the bill says.
This issue is what's on everyone's mind.
Fact check that.
Donald Trump put this all into motion.
Fairbuck says they don't.
Brags about how great it
They're
was
not gonna, but they should.
that he put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade. 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he tells us, oh, we send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing. Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing. A young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication, a tear in the membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care at that point needs to be decided by the doctor. And that would have been an abortion. But in Texas, that would have put them in legal jeopardy. She went home, got sepsis, nearly dies, and now she may have difficulty having children. Or in Kentucky, Hadley Duvall, a 12-year-old child raped and impregnated by her stepfather. Those are horrific. Now, when God asked about that, Senator Vance said 2 wrongs don't make a right. There is no right in this. So in Minnesota,
that's what that statement means. 2 wrongs don't make a right.
Roe versus Wade, we made sure that we put women in charge of their health care. But look, this is not where, if you don't know Amanda or a Hadley, you soon will. Their Project 2025 is going to have a registry.
Sounded like a threat.
It's going to make it more
Project 2025, bro,
to get contraception and limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business, but those things are being proposed. And the catch-all on this is, well, the states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about health care. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in health care for a reason. We trust women, we trust doctors.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's claim? Will you create a federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, you know, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies.
Yeah, there we go.
Feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. I want it to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise that family. And I think there's so much that we can do on the public policy front just to give women more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions. Let the individual states make their abortion policy. And I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy and divided country.
Governor, would you like to respond and also answer the question about...
He's got to hammer walls.
Yeah, well, the question got asked, and Donald Trump...
He's not hammering them on
He
this.
signed the bill that allows it all the way up until 9 months. You should fact check him.
About this idea that there's diverse states.
He's being very cordial. I think that might be the one caveat, is he needs to be a little more cutthroat.
Restrictive state.
He needs to grill him on that 9 months.
A long distance to North
I
Carolina.
think that he's coming off very likable.
Amber
But he's
Thurman
not
died
doing it. I don't know what is
in that
better or not.
Journey back and forth. The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as the right to control your own body, is determined on geography? There's a very real chance, had Amber Thurman lived in Minnesota, she would be alive today. That's why the restoration of Roe versus Wade. When you listen to Vice President Harris talk about this subject and you hear me talk about it, you hear us talking exactly the same. Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to get the political right of this. I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His running mate, though, does not, and that's the problem.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, let me ask you about that. He mentioned, I think, referring to a national ban. In the past, you have supported a federal ban on abortion after 15 weeks. In fact, you said if someone can't support legislation like that, quote, you are making the United States the most barbaric pro-abortion regime anywhere in the entire world. My question is, why have you changed your position?
Well, Nora, first of all, I never supported a national ban. I did when I was running for Senate in 2022 talk about setting some minimum national standard. For example, we have a partial birth abortion ban in place in this country at the federal level. I don't think anybody's trying to get rid of that, or at least I hope not, though I know that Democrats have taken a very radical pro-abortion stance. But Nora, you know, one of the things that changed is in the state of Ohio, we had a referendum in 2023, and the people of Ohio voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora, is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust. So many young women would love to have families. So many young women also see an unplanned pregnancy as something that's going to destroy their livelihood, destroy their education, destroy their relationships. And we have got to earn people's trust back. And that's why Donald Trump and I are committed to pursuing pro-family policies, making childcare more accessible, making fertility treatments more accessible, because we've got to do a better job at that. And that's what real leadership is.
Governor, your response.
Well, I'm going to respond on the pro-abortion piece of that. No, we're not. We're pro-women. We're pro-freedom to make your own choice. We know what the implications are to not be that. Women having miscarriages, women not getting the care, physicians feeling like they may be prosecuted for providing that care. And as far as making sure that we're educating our children and giving them options, Minnesota's a state with one of the lowest teen pregnancy rates. We understand that too. We know that the options need to be available, and we make that true. We also make it, we're a top 3 state for the best place to raise children. But these two things, to try and say that we're pro-children, but we don't like this, or you guys are pro-abortion, that's not the case at all. We are pro-freedoms for women to make their choices, and we're going, and Kamala Harris is making the case, to make options for children more affordable, a $6,000 child tax credit, but we're not going to base that on the backs of making someone like Amber Thurman drive 600 miles to try and get health care.
Senator?
May I respond to that? First of all, Governor, I agree with you. Amber Thurman should still be alive, and there are a lot of people who should still be alive, and I certainly wish that she was. And maybe you're free to disagree with me on this and explain this to me, but as I read the Minnesota law that you signed into law, the statute you signed into law,
this is a shot.
Says that a doctor
I'm worried it
backfires over an
backfires.
abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survives a botched late-term abortion. That is, I think,
That's
whether
not
you're
true.
pro-choice or
That's not how the law
pro-abortion,
is.
that is fundamentally barbaric. And that's why I use that word, Nora, is because some of what we've seen, do you want to force
kind of
Catholic
hammering
nuns
it.
to perform
They
abortions
better
against
fact
their
check it
will?
now.
Because Kamala Harris has supported suing Catholic nuns to violate their freedom of conscience. We can be a big and diverse country where we respect people's freedom of conscience and make the country more pro-baby and pro-family. But please.
Yes, Governor, please respond.
Look, this is one where there's always something there. This is a very simple proposition. These are women's decisions to make about their healthcare decisions, and
I hate the fucking dogmatic phrases about this
to do
fucking
this. Trying to
topic.
distort the way a law is written to try and make a point. That's not it at all.
What was I wrong about, Governor? Please tell me. What was I wrong about?
That is not the way the law is written. Look, I've given.
But how?
I've given this advice on a lot of things that getting involved, getting engaged. That's been misread, and it was fact checked at the last debate. But the point on this is there's a continuation of these guys to try and tell women or to get involved. I use this line on this. Just mind your own business. On this. Things worked best when Roe versus Wade was in place. When we do a restoration of Roe, that works best. That doesn't preclude us from increasing funding for children. It doesn't increase us from making sure that once that child's born, like in Minnesota, they get meals, they get early childhood education, they get health care. So the hiding behind we're going to do all these other things when you're not proposing them in your budget. Kamala Harris is proposing them. She's proposing all those things to make life easier for families.
I asked a specific question, Governor. You gave me a slogan as a response.
It's not the case. It's not true. That's not what the law says. So they fact-checked it with President Trump.
Gentlemen, there's a lot to discuss. We have to move on, and we're going to be right back.
Oh, fact check!
News Vice
Oh, man.
Wait, are they going to fact check it? Did they just say that? They're going to fact check it when they get back?
Is that? I don't know. I can maybe rewind.
We're going to do all these other things when you're not proposing them in your budget.
Be right back with much more of the CBS News vice presidential debate in just a moment.
Nope.
Okay, let's.
So, just so you guys know, it absolutely is the case. The Minnesota bill allows abortion all the way up until the day of birth, and it arguably is the case that there's no duty to preserve the life of a failed abortion.
In fact, if you have tuned into any content of mine in Lactoids in the recent week, you saw us on Wix expose the lies about this that the Dems are giving just within the last 7 days.
That 9-month thing is just like a blatant lie. It's just absolutely blatant lie.
I wanted to bring this up to you. It's a little bit off topic of the debate, but I found it interesting. I guess I didn't realize this when I was watching the presidential, not the first one, but the presidential debate, right? Like how many things actually Trump said that sounded crazy. I mean, at first I looked, but maybe there's
the trans prisoners.
Right, that one stood out to me pretty immediately, right? But it's like you go down the list, and like the only one that was really kind of out of pocket is the dogs one, right?
Dogs,
and like you can see why he said that, and that's why the Dems focused on. But all the other ones had a kernel of truth at like to a significant margin,
more than a kernel of truth, yeah. It's all truth. It's just like hyperbole, right? Trump lives in hyperbole, and so a lot of the things are like very. He's very, I guess, ecstatic when he says it. He's very direct. He's also very exaggeratory, right? I mean, a lot of times things are sort of like, it's not really that big of a deal, but the numbers doesn't sound quite right. But like the actual point, there is some truth behind it. But on this one, when he says, no, that's absolutely not true in terms of abortion up until 9 months, that's just a flat out falsehood, right? I have read the Minnesota law. I've looked into it. It is absolutely the case that it establishes abortion as a right up until the day of birth, and then it removed the language that required a doctor to preserve the life of a failed abortion. Now, does that mean there couldn't be some other law that applies? It's a little bit unclear, but the 9-month thing is absolutely clear. That there's no debate about that.
I think that. This is my concern with that. I think that Vance has done really well coming off very likable, and he has gotten a couple dunks in. I think this is maybe the Republicans' weakest issue, right? And I did want him to nail him on this, right? But I definitely have the fear that like that could come off like badly. Now I think he did well enough in this that he didn't get nailed back, or like where they could turn it back on him. But I think with his focusing on families thing, I think that was a well played tactic. I feel like he came off very soft for Republicans, to people that would be moderates that are more concerned about it. I think that was the right play, was not
maybe
like, gutting them.
Well, maybe, and maybe this is just like the fucking debate lord to me, but like I wanted to say maybe a nice gut, right? Like, you're wrong on that, Tim. You know, it does allow it right up until birth, like, you know, just so you know.
I think he did that though. I think he did pretty much now. I mean, he wasn't maybe as cutthroaty as I would have liked, but you know, I'm also a little more of an asshole than other people. So, you know, it's kind of like, I want to see, I'm really interested to see how it plays.
And I understand the hesitation too, because going to keep in mind, this is the #1 issue for women, for young women in America, right? Between the ages of, I think it was like 18 and 35 or something along these lines. More so than the economy, more so than democracy, more so than inflation, more so than anything else. It's by a significant margin. Young women this is their issue, right? Everything else falls by the wayside besides abortion. And so when you're considering, how to address this politically, if you got to be careful because, even if you're focused on the economy, even if you're focused on democracy, it might not matter, at least among that voter demographic.
Welcome back to the CBS.
Hey, that might be
News
the nearest perfect the first half
presidential
as Vance
debate.
could have got.
We want to turn now to America's
Like I rate that like
gun violence
8.59 almost.
The leading cause
by
of
Vance.
death for children and teens in
It's pretty
America
high.
I'll give him a
is
7.
by firearms. Senator Vance,
Maybe a 7.5.
You oppose most gun legislation that Democrats claim would curb gun violence. You oppose
Walls
red
did
flag
solid
gun
too,
laws
but
and
nervous early.
legislation to ban certain semi-automatic
He's not doing terrible.
rifles, including AR-15s. So let me ask you,
A gun
earlier
question.
this year, for the first time, the parents of a school shooter were convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 10
Sounds
years
like a prime
in
debate
prison.
question.
Do you think holding parents responsible could curb mass shootings? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, Nora, on that particular case, I don't know the full details, but I certainly trust local law enforcement and local authorities to make those decisions. I think in some cases the answer is going to be yes, and in some cases the answer is going to be no. And the details really matter here, of course. For example, if a kid steals a gun, that's going to be different than if a parent hands over a gun knowing that their kid is potentially dangerous. But look, I want to just sort of speak as a father of 3 beautiful little kids, and our oldest is now in 2nd grade. And like a lot of parents, we send our kids to school with such hope and such joy and such pride at their little faces on the first day of school. And we know, unfortunately, that a lot of kids are going to experience this terrible epidemic of gun violence. And of course, our hearts go out to the families that are affected by this terrible stuff. And we do have to do better. And I think that Governor Walz and I actually probably agree that we need to do better on this. The question is just, how do we actually do it? Now, here's something that really bothers me and worries me about this epidemic of violence. The gross majority, close to 90% in some of the statistics I've seen, of the gun violence in this country is committed with illegally obtained firearms. And while we're on that topic, we know that thanks to Kamala Harris's open border, we've seen a massive influx in the number of illegal guns run by the Mexican drug cartel. So that number, the amount of illegal guns in our country is higher today than it was 3.5 years ago. But what do we do about the schools? What do we do to protect our kids? And I think the answer is, and I say this not loving the answer, because I don't want my kids to go to school in a school that feels unsafe or where there are visible signs of security. But I unfortunately think that we have to increase security in our schools. We have to make the doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger. We've got to make the windows stronger. And of course, we've got to increase school resource officers, because the idea that we can magically wave a wand and take guns out of the hands of bad guys, it just doesn't fit with recent experience. So we've got to make our schools safer. And I think we've got to have some common sense bipartisan solutions for how to do that.
Governor, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I think all the parents watching tonight, this is your biggest nightmare. Look, I got a 17-year-old, and he witnessed a shooting at a community center playing volleyball. Those things don't leave you. As a member of Congress, I sat in my office surrounded by dozens of the Sandy Hook parents, and they were looking at my 7-year-old picture on the wall. Their 7-year-old were dead, and they were asking us to do something. And look, I'm a hunter. I own firearms. The vice president is. We understand that the Second Amendment is there, but our first
no way
responsibility is to
she a
our kids
hunter?
to figure this out. In Minnesota, we
Oh yeah, bro, it's big time.
enhanced.
She goes and hunts with Brock Lesnar.
Enhanced background checks, and we can start to get data. But here's the problem: if we really want to solve this, we've got folks that won't allow research to be even done on gun violence, and this idea that we should just live with it. And I here's what I do think.
Bro, we're gonna
This is
guaranteed to get a
good start
photo of her
conversation.
hunting something before the
I
election.
100% believe that Senator Vance
There's no way she hunts.
hates it when these kids. It's a.
They gotta go
She's
to
from
the-
California, dude.
I agree with that.
They're gonna find something she can hunt.
That's not far enough when we know there are things that work. I've spent time in Finland and seen some Finnish schools. They don't have this happen, even though they have a high gun ownership rate in the country. There are reasonable things that we can do to make a difference. It's not infringing on your Second Amendment. And the idea to
Yes,
have
it is.
some of these weapons out there, it just doesn't make any sense. Kamala Harris, as an attorney general, worked on this issue. She knows that it's there. No one's trying to scaremonger and say we're taking your guns, but I ask all of you out there, Do you want your schools hardened to look like a fort? Is that what we have to go when we know there's countries around the world?
Personally,
children
yes.
Aren't practicing these types of drills. They're being kids. We owe it to them to get a fix. These are things that shouldn't be that difficult. You can still keep your firearms, and we can make a difference. We have to. If you're listening tonight, this breaks your heart.
Senator.
Tim, first of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed a shooting. I'm sorry about that, and I hope that he's doing okay. Christ have mercy. It is awful. And I appreciate what Tim said, actually, about Finland, because I do think it illustrates some of the frankly, weird differences between our own country's gun violence problem and Finland. Is okay, first of all, we have way higher rates of mental health abuse, or mental health substance abuse. We have way higher rates of depression, way higher rates of anxiety. We unfortunately have a mental health crisis in this country that I really do think that we need to get to the root causes of, because I don't think it's the whole reason why we have such a bad gun violence problem, but I do think it's a big piece of it. Another driver of the gun violence epidemic, especially that affecting our kids, it doesn't earn as many headlines, but is the terrible gun violence problem in a lot of our big cities. And this is why we have to empower law enforcement to arrest the bad guys, put them away, and take gun offenders off the streets. I think there's a whole host of things that we can do here, but I do think at our schools we've got to talk about more security.
Senator, thank you. Governor, you previously opposed an assault weapons ban, but only later in your political career did you change your position. Why?
Yeah, I sat in that office with those Sandy Hook parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA, I was NRA guy.
He became friends with school shooters?
Safety. I'm of an age.
That's going to be a clip.
I was in my car so I could pheasant hunt after football practice.
Holy
That's not
shit.
where we live today. And several things I want to mention on this is talking about cities and where it's at. The number one where the most firearm deaths happen in Minnesota are
that's a
and
fuck
an
up.
epidemic
A little
of
bit, yeah.
children getting guns and shooting themselves. And so we have, and we should look at all of the issues. Making sure folks have health care and all that, but I want to be very careful. This idea of stigmatizing mental health, just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're violent. And I think what we end up doing is we start looking for a scapegoat. Sometimes it's just the guns. It's just the guns. And there are things that you can do about it. But I do think that this is one, and I think this is a healthy conversation. I think there's a capacity to find solutions on this.
It's just the guns.
Protect Second Amendment, protect our children. That's our priority.
It's just the guns. How are you going to protect the Second Amendment? It's just the guns.
Hey, bro, he doesn't understand walls, and he's friends with school shooters, you know.
Oh, yeah. Well, maybe he might be pretty good in the Second Amendment then. I don't know.
4 million homes in the United States.
Hey, good
and
questions.
That contributes to the
We need
high
answers.
housing crisis. Governor
He
Walz
learns more stuff in the
campaign
CCP.
promises a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and a $10,000 tax credit. They also promise to build 3 million new homes. Where are you building these homes, and won't handing out that kind of money just drive up prices higher?
No, it's not handing out. We have, first, let me say this issue of housing, and I think those of you listening on this, the problem we've had is that we've got a lot of folks that see housing as another commodity. It can be bought up, it can be shifted, it can be moved around. Those are not folks living in those houses. Those of you listening tonight, that house is a big deal. I bought and owned one house in my life. My mom still lives in the house where I was. And when I think of a house, I'm thinking of Christmas services after midnight mass where you go with your family. We need to make it more affordable. And one of the things, as I said, this program that the vice president is
I hope he asked if that's a lesson he learned in Hong Kong.
Way of approaching this is something we're doing in Minnesota from that lead.
That would definitely change the temperature.
Invested in making sure our housing was the biggest investment that we'd ever made in housing. It starts to make it easier. We cut some of the red tape. Local folks, look, we can't do it at the federal level, but local folks make it easier to build those homes. And then that down payment assistance. I can tell all of you out there, one of the, certainly for me, using the GI Bill was one thing, but a veteran's home loan, the big thing about a veteran's home loan is you don't have to pay the down payment. Those are things that—
Is that actually true?
You're going to pay it back, and you're going to pay your mortgage. Those are things that we know in the long run, the appreciated value, the generational wealth
serve the
that's
country,
created from it.
Jesus.
And I will give Minneapolis an example. Minneapolis is the one city where we've seen the lowest inflation rates. We've seen a 12% increase in stock because we've put some of these things in, and we're implementing a state program to make sure we give some of that down payment assistance. We get it back from people because here's what we know. People with stable housing end up with stable jobs. People with stable housing have their kids able to get to school. All of those things in the long run end up saving our money. And that's the thing that I think we should be able to find some common ground in, but we can't blame immigrants for the only reason. That's not the case that's happening in many cities. The fact of the matter is that we don't have enough naturally affordable housing, but we can make sure that the government's there to help kickstart it, create that base.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, as far as your campaign's position, the promise is to seize federal lands to build homes, remove regulation, provide tax breaks, and cut back on immigration, which you say pushes up prices. Where are you going to build all the new homes you're promising, and what part of any of this plan will provide immediate relief? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country, which does drive up costs, Tim. 25 million illegal aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers of home prices in the country. It's why we have massive
Bro, he's nailing him on this immigration
prices
thing
that have happened right alongside massive increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala Harris's leadership. Now, Tim just mentioned a bunch of ideas. Now, some of those ideas I actually think are halfway decent, and some of them I disagree with. But the most important thing here is Kamala Harris is not running as a newcomer to politics. She is the sitting vice president. If she wants to enact all of these policies to make housing more affordable, I invite her to use the office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign and do nothing while Americans find the American dream of homeownership completely unaffordable. Now, you asked, Margaret, what would immediately change the equation for American citizens? If you lower energy prices, as Donald Trump says, drill, baby, drill, one of the biggest drivers of housing costs aside from illegal immigration is, think about it, if a truck driver's paying 40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is also going to become a lot more expensive. If we open up American energy, you will get immediate pricing relief for American citizens, not, by the way, just in housing, but in a whole host of other economic goods too.
Senator Vance, you still have 23 seconds there. Do you want to answer?
Can I have it?
Where, yeah. Governor, we will get to you in a moment. But Senator, where are you going to seize the federal lands? Can you clarify?
Well, what Donald Trump has said is we have a lot of federal lands that aren't being used for anything. They're not being used for a national park. They're not being used, and they could be places where we build a lot of housing. And I do think that we should be opening up building in this country. We have a lot of land that could be used. We have a lot of Americans that need homes. We should be kicking out illegal immigrants who are competing for those homes, and we should be building more homes for the American citizens who deserve to be here.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, I do want to let you respond to the allegation that the vice president is letting in
Well, of course, that's not true. And again, you have the facts. I guess we agreed not to fact check. I'll check it. That, look, crossings are down compared to when Donald Trump left office. But it's, again, blaming and not trying
to agree to, huh?
I was going to ask, though, on this question, are we going to drill and build houses in the same federal land? And
fact checked him earlier.
Federal lands, these are really important pieces of land.
God, JD really should have fact checked that 9-month thing. That bothers me, but
whatever. We do. There's not a lot of federal land.
Yeah, I think he did, though.
Around Minneapolis.
Not the 9-month thing. No, not really.
So the issue is I don't understand the federal lands issue unless we see this, and I worry.
Yeah, I mean, that was, I don't know.
Deeply about our national parks. And
I get it. It's a touchy issue. I get it.
We protect these things. We've got about
less time on the issue is better for him, I think.
These lands protect. They're there for a reason. They belong to all of us. But again, this is when you view housing and you view these things as commodities. Like, there's a chance to make money here. Let's take this federal land and let's sell it to people for that. I think there's better ways to do this. We've seen it in Minnesota. We're able to refurbish some of these houses. We're able to make some investments. That gets people in. And I'm still on the fact on this. Economists, Senator Vance, you said you don't like the economists. Which economists are saying that it is immigrants that's adding to the cost?
Governor, your time is up. But Senator, on that point, I'd like for you to clarify. There are many contributing factors to high housing costs. What evidence do you have that migrants are part of this problem?
Supply and demand, baby.
Reserve study that we're happy to share after the debate. We'll put it up on social media, actually, that really drills down on the connection between increased levels of migration, especially illegal immigration, and higher housing prices. Now, of course, Margaret, that's not the entire driver of higher housing prices. It's also the regulatory regime of Kamala Harris. Look, we are a country of builders. We're a country of doers. We're a country of explorers. But we increasingly have a federal administration that makes it harder to develop our our resources, makes it harder to build things, and wants to throw people in jail for not doing everything exactly as Kamala Harris says they have to do. And what that means is that you have a lot of people who would love to build homes who aren't able to build homes. I actually agree with Tim Walz. We should get out of this idea of housing as a commodity, but the thing that has most turned housing into a commodity is giving it away to millions upon millions of people who have no legal right to be here.
What are the federal regulations? I deal with this as a governor.
You can very quickly reply.
I'm sorry. I get this as a governor, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, that in some cases, many of those are local, many of them are state. I don't know which ones are federal, but I think whenever we talk regulations, people think they can get rid of them. I think you want to be able to get out of your house in a fire. I think you want to make sure that it's fireproof and those types of things. So which are the regulations? Because the vice president's
I shouldn't have to make my house. No, fuck that.
Those.
Governor, thank you. Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. You're passionate about the housing crisis, I can tell. But Nora?
Thank you. One of the top problems facing Americans is the high cost of health care. Senator Vance, at the last presidential debate, former President Trump was asked about replacing the Affordable
concepts
Care
thing.
Act.
He's going to bring
In
up the
response,
concepts.
he said, I have concepts of a plan. Since then, Senator, you've talked about changing how chronically ill Americans get health insurance. Can you explain how that would work? And can you guarantee that Americans with pre-existing conditions won't pay more? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, of course, we're going to cover Americans with pre-existing conditions. In fact, a lot of my family members have gotten health care. I believe, members of my family actually got private health insurance, at least for the first time, switched off of Medicaid onto private insurance for the first time under Donald Trump's leadership. And I think that, a lot of people have criticized this concepts of a plan remark. Look, it's very simple common sense. I think as Tim Walz knows from 12 years in Congress, you're not going to propose a 900-page bill standing on a debate stage. It would bore everybody to tears, and it wouldn't actually mean anything because part of this is the give and take of bipartisan negotiation. Now, when Donald Trump was actually president, and again, he has a record to be proud of, prescription drugs fell in 2018 for the first time in a very long time. Under Kamala Harris's leadership, prescription drugs are up about 7%. Under Donald Trump's entire 4 years, they were up about 1.5%. He introduced pricing transparency. Think about healthcare. You go into a hospital, you try to buy something, and nobody knows what it actually costs. That price transparency will actually give American consumers a little bit more choice and will also drive down costs. And we talked about, the reinsurance regulations is what I was talking about. Look, Donald Trump has said that if we allow states to experiment a little bit on how to cover both the chronically ill but the non-chronically ill, it's not just a plan. He actually implemented some of these regulations when he was president of the United States. And I think you can make a really good argument that it salvaged Obamacare, which was doing disastrously until Donald Trump came along. And I think this is an important point about President Trump. Of course, you don't have to agree with everything that President Trump has ever said or ever done. But when Obamacare was crushing under the weight of its own regulatory burden and healthcare costs, Donald Trump could have destroyed the program. Instead, he worked in a bipartisan way to ensure that Americans had access to affordable care. It's not perfect, of course, and there's so much more that we can do, but I think that Donald Trump has earned the right to put in place some better healthcare policies. He's earned it because he did it successfully the first time.
Governor?
All right, here's where being an old guy gives you some history. I was there at the creation of the ACA. And the reason it was so important is I come from a major healthcare state, home of the Mayo Clinic, home to Medical Alley, 3M, Medtronic, all of those. We understand healthcare. It's why we're ranked first on affordability and accessibility and quality of healthcare. And so what I know is under Kamala Harris, more people are covered than they have before. And those of you listening, this is critical to you. Now, Donald Trump all of a sudden wants to. Go back and remember this. He ran on the first thing he was going to do on day one was to repeal Obamacare. On day one, he tried to sign an executive order to repeal the ACA. He signed on to a lawsuit to repeal the ACA, but lost at the Supreme Court. And he would have repealed the ACA had it not been for the courage of John McCain to save that bill. Now, fast forward, what that means to you is you lose your pre-existing conditions. If you're sitting at home and you got asthma, too bad. If you're a woman, probably not. Broke your foot during football, might kick you out. Your kids get kicked out when they're 26. Kamala Harris negotiated drug prices for the first time with Medicare. We have 10 drugs that will come online, the most common ones that'll be there. But look, this issue, and when Donald Trump said, I've got a concept of a plan, it cracked me up as a fourth grade teacher because my kids would have never given me that. But what Senator Vance just explained might be worse than a concept, because what he explained is pre-Obamacare. And I'll make this as simple as possible because I have done this for a long time. What they're saying is, if you're healthy, why should you be paying more? So what they're going to do is let insurance companies pick who they insure, because
why should they be paying more?
You pay your premium, it's not much. They figure they're not going to have to pay out to you. But those of you a little older, gray, got cancer, you're going to get kicked out of it. That's why the system didn't work. Kamala Harris will protect and enhance the ACA.
Governor, thank you. Senator, you have not yet explained how you would protect people with pre-existing conditions or laid out that plan.
Well, look, we currently have laws and regulations in place right now that protect people with pre-existing conditions. We want to keep those regulations in place, but we also want to make the health insurance marketplace function a little bit better. Now, what Governor Walz just said is actually not true. A lot of what happened, and the reason that Obamacare was crushing under its own weight, is that a lot of young and healthy people were leaving the exchanges. Donald Trump actually helped address that problem, and he did so in a way that preserved people's access to coverage who had pre-existing conditions. But again, something that these guys do is they make a lot of claims about if Donald Trump becomes president, all of these terrible consequences are going to ensue. But in reality, Donald Trump was president. Inflation was low. Take-home pay was higher. And he saved the very program from a Democratic administration that was collapsing and would have collapsed absent his leadership. He did his job, which is govern in a bipartisan way and
talk
get
about the
results,
individual mandate.
not just complain about problems, but actually solve them.
Governor, did enrollment under the Affordable Care Act go up under the Trump administration?
It's higher now that we've seen it go up. Look, people are using it. The system works. And the question about this of young people or whatever, that's the individual mandate piece of this. And Republicans fought tooth and nail saying, well, Americans should be free to do this. Well, then what happens is... So you
think the individual mandate's a good idea?
You shrink. I think the idea of making sure the risk pool is broad enough to cover everyone, that's the only way insurance works. When it doesn't, it collapses. You are asking pre-ACA where we get people out. Look, people know that they need to be on health care. People expect it to be there. And when we are able to make it, and we are making it this way, when we incentivize people to be in the market, when we help people who might not be able to afford it get there, and we make sure then when you get sick and old, it's there for you. Because I heard people say, well, I don't want to buy into Medicare or whatever. Good luck buying health care once you get past 70. So look, the ACA works. We can continue to do better. Kamala Harris did that. The way she made everything better was negotiating those 10 drugs on Medicare for the first time in American history.
Thank you. Margaret.
Can I address that?
I apologize. We're out of time. We have a number of subjects to discuss. Margaret.
Let's talk about families in America. There is a child care crisis in this country, and the United States is one of the very few developed countries in the world without a national paid leave program for new parents. Governor Walz, you've said that if Democrats win both the White House and Congress, this is a day one priority for you. How long should employers be required to pay workers while they are home taking care of their newborns? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's negotiable, and that's what Congress worked. But here's what the deal is. Americans sitting out there right now, you may work for a big company. Look, we're home in Minnesota to some of the largest Fortune 500 companies. Kamala Harris knows that in California. Those companies provide paid family medical leave. One is, I think they're moral and they think it's a good thing, but it also keeps their employees healthy. We in Minnesota passed a paid family medical leave. You have a child, and I had to go back to work 5 days after my kids were born. This allows you to stay home a certain amount of time. What we know is that gets the child off to a better start, the family works better, we stay in their employers, we get more consistency in that. So Kamala Harris has made it a priority. We implemented it in Minnesota and we see growth. That's how you become a pro-business state. But the negotiations on it, and here's the issue, those big companies are able to offer it. Those of you out there who don't have it, just imagine what happens if you get cancer or your child gets sick. We know what happens. You end up staying home. In some places, that means no paycheck because you've got no protection on that. This is the case of an economy that Donald Trump has set for the wealthiest amongst us. He's willing to give those tax breaks to the wealthiest. He's willing to say, bust those unions up. Do
Remember,
whatever.
your employer
What
got you
we're
pregnant,
saying is
so
the
they're
economy works
responsible,
best
apparently.
when it works for all of us. And so a paid family medical
Crazy
leave program,
talk,
and I
bro.
will tell you, go to the families or go to the businesses and ask them. As far as childcare on this, you have to take it at both the supply and the demand side. You can't expect the most important people in our lives to take either our children or our parents to get paid the least amount of money. And we have to make it easier for folks to be able to get into that business and then to make sure that folks are able to pay for that. We were able to do it in Minnesota, and I'm still telling you this. We were listed as the best state. We're still in crisis on this. A federal program of paid family and medical leave and help with this will enhance our workforce, enhance our families, and make it easier to have the children that you want.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, do you support a national paid leave program? And if so, for
He's probably
going to
say yes, because the fucking American public is fucked on this fucking topic.
While they are home taking care of their newborn. You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, first of all, Margaret, a number of my Republican colleagues and
Hey,
some
what I don't wanna
Democrats,
pay for
too,
this.
have worked on this issue, and I think there is a bipartisan solution here because a lot of us care about this issue. I mean, look, I speak from this very personally because I'm married to a beautiful woman who is an incredible mother to our 3 beautiful kids, but is also a very, very brilliant corporate litigator. And I'm so proud of her. But being a working mom, even for somebody with all of the advantages of my wife, is extraordinarily difficult. And it's not just difficult from a policy perspective. She actually had access to paid family leave because she worked for a bigger company.
It's a smart
move.
move.
Cultural pressure on
Peace
young
at home.
families and especially
Yeah,
young
look,
women,
politically it's a smart
think
move, I
makes
get it,
really
but I just
hard for
hate,
people
like,
to choose
that
the
we're here as a
family model they
country.
want. A lot of young women would like to go back to work immediately. Some would like to spend a little time home with the kids.
Yeah,
Some
but
would like
here's
to
the
spend
thing,
longer at home with the
is
kids.
you know this is going to be so far down their list of priorities, it's never going to get done.
Makes choice possible.
I get
This
it.
is a
I
very
just, like,
important
there's part of me
substantive
that's just like,
difference
fucking
between
start
Donald
yelling
Trump
about
and Kamala
libertarian
Harris's
shit, but he
approach.
can't. He
I mean,
can't
look,
do it.
If you look at the federal
Because they'd be
programs
like,
that we
oh,
have
well,
that support paid
I want
family
free
leave
shit.
right
I
now,
want- I want-
the
I want
Community
free money.
Development Block
Yeah,
Grant,
okay.
and there's another block grant program that spends
guess
a
we'll
lot
give
of
it to
money
you.
from the federal government. These programs only go to one kind of childcare model. Let's say you'd like your church maybe to help you out with childcare. Maybe you live in a rural area or an urban area and you'd like to get together with families in your neighborhood to provide childcare in the way that makes the most sense.
I want
You
my
don't get
cult
access
to provide
any of
childcare.
these federal
What about that,
monies.
JD?
We want to promote choice in how
Cult.
we deliver family care and how we promote childcare because look, it is unacceptable. And, you know, of course, Tim and I have been on the campaign trail a lot the past 7 or 8 weeks. And one of the biggest complaints I hear from young families is people who feel like they don't have options, like they're choosing between going to work or taking care for their kids. That is an incredible burden to put on American families. We're the only country that does it. I think we could do a heck of a lot better.
Senator, thank you. You have also said, Senator Vance, many things about the American family. The Federal Reserve says parents will spend nearly as much on child care as they do on housing each month. So I want to get your thoughts on this. President Trump recently said, as much as child care is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kinds of numbers we'll be taking in. Is President Trump committed to the $5,000 per child tax credit that you have described? You have 1 minute.
Well, what President
A
Trump
tax
said,
credit, but
Margaret,
it's a
I just wanna
handout.
defend my
It's
running mate here a
5,000
little
free
bit,
bucks
is
from the
that
government.
We're going to be taking in a lot of money by penalizing companies
During a time
for
of high
shipping jobs
inflation.
overseas and penalizing countries who employ slave laborers and then ship their products back into our country and undercut the wages of American workers. It's the heart of the Donald Trump economic plan. Cut taxes for American workers and American families. Cut taxes for businesses that are hiring and building companies in the United States of America, but penalize companies and countries that are shipping jobs overseas. That's the heart of the economic proposal. And I think what President Trump is saying is that when we bring in this additional revenue with higher economic growth, we're going to be able to provide paid family leave, childcare options that are viable and workable for a lot of American families.
Paid family.
Can you
Your
clarify
employer
how
has to
that
pay for
will
this. Crazy.
solve the child care
Yeah, I
shortage?
hate it. I hate it so
Well, because,
much.
as Tim said, a lot of the child care shortages, we just don't have enough resources going into the multiple people who could be providing family care options. And we're going to have to, unfortunately, look, we're going to have to spend more money. We're going to have to induce more people to want to provide child care options for American families, because the reason it's so expensive right now is because you've got way too few
Libertarianism
people
is fucking
providing
dead
this very
in
essential
this country.
service.
It's gone.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz,
it's not America
your
anymore.
Ticket also has some child care tax credit proposals. Do you think Congress will agree to the $6,000 credit for newborns and $3,000 credit for children over the age of 6, as your campaign has promised? Is that realistic?
Well, if these members of Congress are listening to anybody, I can tell you, and this is the biggest issue. Everybody listening tonight knows. I mean, I'm sure they were shocked to hear it's not that expensive. And let's be clear, whether it's $5,000 or $6,000, that pays you about 3 or 4 months. Let's be clear of where we're at on this. It's because we got out of an imbalance on this. We thought we were going to get by not paying people. I don't think Senator Vance and I are that far apart. I'm not opposed to what he's talking about on options. We've done scholarships types of things. I think we need to be open to making the case. But the issue here is, the question you asked is, you're not going to pay for it with these tariffs. That's just adding another $4,000 on the family and taking less. So not only do they not get the money to pay for that, they're $4,000 in the hole. That's Wharton School. That's his alma mater. And so I think the issue here is, those members of Congress, I can't believe they're not. When I go to businesses, sure, they'll talk about taxes sometime, but they will lead with childcare and they will lead with housing, because we know the problem is, especially in a state like Minnesota, we need more workers because our economy's growing, but we need the workforce.
Governor, thank you. We need to move on. Nora?
Let's talk about the state of democracy, the top issue for Americans after the economy and inflation. After the 2020 election, President Trump's campaign and others filed 62 lawsuits contesting the results. Judges, including those appointed by President Trump and other Republican presidents, looked at the evidence and said there was no widespread fraud. The governors of every state in the nation, Republicans and Democrats, certified the 2020 election results and sent a legal slate of electors to Congress for January 6th. Senator Vance, you have said you would not have certified the last presidential election and would have asked the states to submit alternative electors. That has been called unconstitutional and illegal. Would you again seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, Nora, first of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis caused by Kamala Harris's policies, make housing affordable, make groceries affordable, and that's what we're focused on. But I want to answer your question because you did ask it. Look, what President Trump has said is that there were problems in 2020, and my own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square, and that's all I've said, and that's all that Donald Trump has said. Remember, he said that on January the 6th, the protesters ought to protest peacefully. And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president, Donald Trump left the White House, and now, of course, unfortunately, we have all of the negative policies that have come from the Harris-Biden administration. I believe that we actually do have a threat to democracy in this country, but unfortunately, it's not the threat to democracy that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz want to talk about. It is the threat of censorship. It's Americans casting aside lifelong friendships because of disagreements over politics. It's big technology companies silencing their fellow citizens. And it's Kamala Harris saying that rather than debate and persuade her fellow Americans, she'd like to censor people who engage in misinformation. I think that is a much bigger threat to democracy than anything that we've seen in this country in the last 4 years, in the last 40 years. Now, I'm really proud, especially given that I was raised by 2 lifelong blue-collar Democrats, to have the endorsement of Bobby Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, lifelong leaders in the Democratic coalition. And of course, they don't agree with me and Donald Trump on every issue. We don't have to agree on every issue, but we're united behind a basic American First Amendment principle that we ought to debate our differences. We ought to argue about them. We ought to try to persuade our fellow Americans. Kamala Harris is engaged in censorship at an industrial scale. She did it during COVID. She's done it over a number of other issues, and that to me is a much bigger threat to democracy than what Donald Trump said.
You should bring a court packing too.
Protesters should peacefully protest on January the 6th.
Do it.
Well, I've enjoyed tonight's debate, and I think there was a lot of commonality here, and I'm sympathetic to misspeaking on things, and I think I might have with the senator.
Me too, man.
There's one though that this one is troubling to me, and I say that because I think we need to tell the story. Donald Trump refused to acknowledge this, and the fact is that I don't think we can be the frog in the pot and let the boiling water go up. He was very clear. I mean, he lost this election, and he said he did. 140 police officers were beaten at the Capitol that day, some with the American flag, several later died. And it wasn't just in there. In Minnesota,
poll has JD Vance with 42 votes winning, 43 votes, and 63% saying that JD Vance is winning.
The only person there was my son and his
Polymarket only had him at like 15%.
Police.
I think Vance is dominated right now.
Mike Pence standing there as they were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." Mike Pence made the right decision. So, Senator, it was adjudicated over and over and over. I worked with kids long enough to know, and I said as a football coach, sometimes you really want to win, but the democracy is bigger than winning an election. You shake hands, and then you try and do everything you can to help the other side win. That's what was at stake here. Now, the thing I'm most concerned about is the idea that imprisoning your political opponents, already laying the groundwork for people not accepting this. And a president's words matter.
Odds here dropped like a rock. He was at like 73%, and then the debate started, and now he's all the way down to like 41%.
Shaking hands when we lose, being honest about it,
It's Polymarket.
What happened on January 6th,
I'll link it. Just give me a
first
second.
time in American history that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power. And here we are 4 years later in the same boat. I will tell you this.
This is really needed by JD Vance.
We need to shake hands this election, and the winner needs to be the winner. This has got to stop. It's tearing our country apart.
Margaret? Senator Vance, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, well, look, Tim, first of all,
I just sent it over to you.
It's really rich for Democratic leaders to say that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250 years in this country. We are going to shake hands after this debate and after this election. And of course, I hope that we win, and I think we're going to win. But if Tim Walz is the next vice president, he'll have my prayers, he'll have my best wishes, and he'll have my help whenever he wants it. But we have to remember that for years in this country, Democrats protested the results of elections. Hillary Clinton in 2016 said that Donald Trump had the election stolen by Vladimir Putin because the Russians bought like $500,000 worth of Facebook ads. This has been going on for a long time. And if we want to say that we need to respect the results of the election, I'm on board. But if we want to say, as Tim Walz is saying, that this is just a problem that Republicans have had, I don't buy that.
Governor.
January 6th was not Facebook ads. And I think a revisionist history on this. Look, I don't understand how we got to this point. But the issue was that happened. Donald Trump can do it. And all of us say there's no place for this. It has massive repercussions.
Well, he's crashing in real time.
Stop people from doing...
The Polymarket's pretty crazy. Like they had him at like 75% to win
We've
this.
seen that brought up.
Back on September 25th, they had him at 82% chance of winning.
Thank Senator Vance. I think this is the conversation.
He's down to 42%.
And I think there's a lot of agreement. But this is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further. But you guys attack us for not believing in democracy. The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation.
Ooh.
Kamala Harris wants to use the power of government and big tech to silence people from speaking their minds. That is a threat to democracy that will long outlive this present political moment. I would like Democrats and Republicans to both reject censorship. Let's persuade one another. Let's argue about ideas, and then let's come together afterwards.
You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's the test. That's
my
the Supreme
fucking
Court
God.
test.
Tim,
That is not the Supreme Court test.
You guys wanted to kick people off of Facebook for saying that toddlers shouldn't
Senator,
wear
the
masks.
governor does
That's
have the
not
floor.
Fire in a crowded theater. That is criticizing the policies of the government, which is the right of every American.
Senator, the governor does have the floor for 1 minute to respond to you.
Yeah. Well, I don't run Facebook. What I do know is I see.
That's not even true. There's that thing that what's his name came out saying that they were in cahoots with the
lost the
government.
election. This is not a debate. It's not anything anywhere other than in Donald Trump's world. Because look, when Mike Pence made that decision to certify that election.
That fire in a crowded
That's why
theater
Mike
example,
Pence
by the way,
on this stage.
terrible
What I'm
example.
concerned about is
Because if
where
you thought
is
there
the
was fire,
firewall with Donald
you
Trump?
should probably yell fire.
Where is the firewall if he knows he could do anything, including taking an election, and his vice president's not going to stand to it? That's what we're asking you, America. Will you stand up? Will you keep your oath of office, even if the president doesn't? And I think Kamala Harris would agree. She wouldn't have picked me if she didn't think I would do that, because of course that's what we would do. So America, I think you've got a really clear choice on this election of who's going to honor that democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump.
Governor, your time is up. Thank you, gentlemen. We will be right back with both of our candidates. The CBS News vice presidential debate.
All right, let's bathrooms if you got them, boys.
Yeah,
Shit.
the hate speech thing that he muttered under his breath, that's pretty telling, right?
Yeah, that's concerning.
It's fucked up. A lot of like left wingers are not committed at all to freedom of expression, and if they perceive something as hate speech, which is just speech that you don't like, or if they perceive it as misinformation, which again, First Amendment in this country protects beliefs, then they want to censor it, which is horrific, absolutely horrific. And
I mean, we see that even on these panels, like a lot of times, and that always interests me, right? Like when we do these panels, and people will like, no, we're not going to talk about this. And they have like an opinion, and it's like we're not even like it's on a debate panel, like, and they're willing to like censor an opinion that they feel is too far. Like, I mean, the one that's been really egregious lately, I think about this, has been the Israel-Palestine one, right? But like, I've had other panels before where like, you get to an issue that they feel fondly about, and there's just no discussion, and it's all hate speech, even if someone has like a nuanced point of view on it, And that's I think it's something they definitely practice when they preach on that, and it's really concerning.
Yeah, hate speech is free speech. That's like that's the critical thing here. Like if hate speech laws that is the death nail for the First Amendment in this country. And I think it needs to be opposed, absolutely. And I think it was good that J.D. Vance talked about censorship. I definitely think that he should have perhaps brought up the examples that I think is relevant to bring up, such as, Kamala Harris's support of court packing, which is unpopular amongst Americans. But also the fact that why is Kamala Harris the nominee as compared to Joe Biden, right? That should have been talked about if we're talking about a threat to democracy. But I don't think that he hammered those points as well as he could have. But according to the market odds, he's doing a lot better than people thought he would, by far.
Oh, I mean, that's kind of what I was saying at the beginning, right? Like, all you had to do is put in a decent performance. And I would say, I mean, the second half hasn't been as good as the first half, or the second, third, whatever, third we got here. What do they call it? Hockey periods? I don't know. I don't watch hockey. It's he did a lot better in the first one. He's done very solid in the second one, right? We've had some pretty big gaffes and fumbles from Walz. Walz hasn't done bad overall. He didn't do Biden bad. He hasn't done Kamala bad, or not Kamala bad, or like whatever. But like he hadn't done like a death nail. But no. I think that with Vance, it's been. He had such a far plummet low that any like good performance is going to move the like needle quite a bit, and I think he's done very well, like better than like at least a 6 or a 5, which I thought he needed to win, and I think he's definitely like a 7.5 overall, maybe a little bit, but somewhere in between there. I think you were pretty accurate with that on your first one, but like if you continued over this one, but I definitely think that it's going to move the needle a lot because the margins are so close right now, and I mean even some recent stuff has Trump kind of coming back on Kamala. Wasn't that the big one? What, yesterday? That said that Nate Silver's thing.
Also, the swing states are so fucking close. I mean, I've said that from the beginning, right? Whoever wins Pennsylvania in this election, I think is going to win the election. I don't see the person who wins the election not winning Pennsylvania, and it is neck and neck in Pennsylvania. And we know that Donald Trump historically overperforms polling. So, for all intents and purposes, the race is going relatively well for him. But to your point about J.D. Vance just having to put on a decent performance, yeah, I mean, the media has been lying about this guy, and even Walz like brought up the weird couch thing that is entirely false, by the way, and kind of painting this guy as just some dorky authoritarian. But the fact that he's able to, I think, speak eloquently and communicate his thoughts well which is what I said at the beginning, right? There's no audience to interrupt him. There's no audience to jeer and clap in particular areas, so he's able to fully explain himself. Perhaps he wouldn't be able to play to the crowd as much as Tim Walz could, but he has that advantage this time around.
He also has nailed so many issues back to the border, like whether or not successfully, but that is the number one issue.
Better than Trump has, honestly.
It is now time for closing statements. Senator Vance won the virtual coin toss and elected to go last. So, Governor Walz, you are first.
Buddy, last. That's the best.
Thank you, Senator Vance. Thank you to CBS News, and most importantly, thank you to all of you. If you're still up and the folks who miss Dancing with Our Stars, I appreciate it. But look, the support of the democracy matters. It matters that you're here. And I'm as surprised as anybody of this coalition that Kamala Harris has built.
Tim Walz perpetually looks surprised, doesn't he?
Cheney to Taylor Swift, and a whole bunch of folks in between there. And they don't all agree on everything, but they are truly optimistic people. They believe in a positive future of this country and one where our politics can be better than it is. And I have to tell you, that better than it is the sense of optimism that there can be an opportunity economy that works for everyone, not just to get by, but to get ahead. And the idea that freedom really means something. Not the freedom of government to be in your bedroom or exam room, but the freedom for you to make choices about yourself. Now, look, we all know
but on your
who
social
Donald
media.
Trump is. He's told us, and as Maya Angelou said, believe him when he told you that. His first inaugural address talked about American carnage, and then he spent 4 years trying to maybe do that. Senator Vance tonight made it clear he will stand with Donald Trump's agenda. He will continue to push down that road. Excuse me. Kamala Harris gives us a different option. Now, I'll have to tell you, I'm going to be careful about the quotes, but there's one that Senator Vance said that does resonate with me. He said, Donald Trump makes the people I care about afraid. A lot of America feels that way. We don't need to be afraid. Franklin Roosevelt was right. All we have to fear is fear itself. Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics of joy. She's bringing real solutions for the middle class, and she's centering you at the heart of that. All the while asking everyone, join this movement, make your voices heard. Let's look for a new day where everybody gets that opportunity and everybody gets a chance to thrive. I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th for Kamala Harris.
Governor Walz, thank you. Senator Vance, your closing statement.
Well, I want to thank Governor Walz, you folks at CBS, and of course the American people for tuning in this evening. And one of the issues we didn't talk about was energy. And I remember when I was being raised by my grandmother, when she didn't have enough money to turn on the heat some nights because Ohio gets pretty cold at night and because money was often very tight. And I believe, as a person who wants to be your next vice president, that we are a rich and prosperous enough country where every American, whether they're rich or poor, ought to be able to turn on their heat in the middle of a cold winter night. That's gotten more difficult thanks to Kamala Harris's energy policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford a nice meal for your family. That's gotten harder because of Kamala Harris's policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford to buy a house. You ought to be able to live in safe neighborhoods. You ought to not have your communities flooded with fentanyl. And that too has gotten harder with because of Kamala Harris's policies. Now, I've been in politics long enough to do what Kamala Harris does when she stands before the American people and says that on day one, she's going to work on all these challenges I just listed. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. Day one was 1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems worse. Now, I believe that we have the most beautiful country in the world. I meet people on the campaign trail who can't afford food, but have the grace and generosity to ask me how I'm doing and to tell me they're praying for my family. What that has taught me is that we have the greatest country, the most beautiful country, the most incredible people anywhere in the world. But they're not going to be able to achieve their full dreams with the broken leadership that we have in Washington. They're not going to be able to live their American dream if we do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well. Please vote for Donald Trump. And whether you vote for me or vote for Tim Walz, I just want to say I'm so proud to be doing this, and I'm rooting for you. God bless you, and good night.
Senator Vance, thank you. And thank you both for participating in the only vice presidential debate of this election cycle. I'm Margaret Brennan.
And I'm Nora O'Donnell.
Ooh, Tim Walz fell even more, 41%.
Yeah, that means he lost.
And for all of us here at CBS
If you
News,
go from
thank
set
you and good
fucking
night.
82% to 41%, I'd call that a loss. I think so.
Yeah, that's a loss.
All right, Andrew Kraft.
Oh yeah, let's yeah. Do you want to join Wick's thing, or what do you want to do here? We can. What do you want to do? This post debate thoughts here.
Yeah, I mean, if Wick is open to talk, we can talk with Wick.
Yeah, he said something about doing open. I saw, but before we go to that, what are your post debate thoughts here? What do you give me the Lactoid breakdown?
Yeah, give me 1 second. Let me just adjust this. Don't tread on me. Sign.
Of course, yeah. We don't have to hide nothing no more.
We don't got to hide nothing no more. All right. So, general thoughts. Obviously, there were specific things that I think that JD Vance could have done better. I think that I'm a little bit hesitant, though, to say that confidently, because as somebody who is most interested in formal debate, there are things that I think that he could have hammered Walz on that were incorrect. He could have fact-checked him. He could have hammered him. But I think that perhaps there's a level of wisdom here that I'm not as cognizant of when it comes to appealing to a voting demographic that's unreasonable. Because the reality is the average American voter is unreasonable. And I think that perhaps being aggressive and being that kind of fact-checking logician and destroying Tim Walz in the debate, and perhaps they've war-gamed this beforehand, and it would have come across as bloodthirsty, it would have come across as aggressive. Perhaps it would have painted JD Vance as too aggressive on sensitive topics like abortion or like childcare, right? Those are the two topics that I think that JD Vance was most meek on, but perhaps being meek was actually the strategy there. So I'm obviously he was one in terms of, he has this perception created by the media about him that he was able to, I think, turn around this time around. And I think that this is going to give the American people a different view as to who JD Vance is and what he wants to accomplish. But I think most importantly, when you go down from 82% to 41%, that is a loss, right? He was favored to win this. Tim Walz was favored to win this. And at most, it's a tie. And the most likely scenario here is that JD Vance edged it, right? That's where I personally put it. I would put JD Vance at a 7.5 is what I put him at before. I'd put Tim Walz at a 6.5 to 7. I don't think either of them floundered dramatically, but I do think that JD Vance edged it. I think that he was more charismatic. I think that he spoke more eloquently. There was a few flubs, but not as many flubs, and there wasn't as much staccata, I guess, in his speaking, where he's choppy and not able to go on to the next word. And when you're in a presidential debate, that's important. That's critical. So, no, I think this went relatively well. I think it definitely went better than Trump's performance in the last debate. I think that he also looks a lot more moderate compared to Trump as well, which is, I think, the American voter might be looking for, right? It's sort of the same role that Mike Pence filled, which is like, hey, I'm this calm, kind of moderate guy. Yeah, Trump's he's the fire starter, right? The trailblazer. But I'm walking behind with the fire extinguisher just to make sure that things don't get out of control. And I think that's what the American people are looking for. So overall, 7.5, I think it was good.
Yeah, I agree with that general assessment. I think my other prediction about how they were going to use Walz actually also came true. I think that he was also the one who defined much more policy. We didn't get just buzzwords like opportunity economy. I think Walz did a lot of that. And I think that he also has a lot more policy he can attack, seeing how he's a governor and all, compared to what we get with Kamala, right? He's much more easily directly attackable. So I agree with you on that. I would have personally liked to see him be a little more cutthroat, especially on a couple of those things, like the abortion one for sure. Now, I don't know. I think it was a strategic choice to get off that topic and not just really fight it. I definitely feel that. He also came a lot more warm, as where Trump is very confrontational. He was very cordial even when he did. And his first thing, if you notice after the debate, he goes up and he's tapping him on the shoulder and shaking his hand. He's much more likable, right? And I think that if the average American that's looking into this, and you've been hearing now he's a dolphin fucker and a couch fucker, and he's weird, and then he's over here this seems like a normal guy. It really feels more like the wolves lifted off again. I think. I don't know. I think that it was an all around victory. I think that And when everything's so close like this is, I think your analogy of putting out the fires is a pretty good analogy. I think that that really sums it up. Especially when he's already called him as bad as Hitler almost. It's like, well, I'm definitely willing to disagree with Trump.
Yeah, yeah, and it's important. I think it's important for him to say that because he has a record of disagreeing with Trump on a few things. But again, I mean, we can't argue with this fucking stats here, right? Like, we can, I guess, pontificate as to what our thoughts are, but the people who are going to be saying, "Oh yeah, Walz totally won," by whose metrics, right? Again, if you have like the betting odds, which frankly, I these days put a little bit more money on. Like, I don't personally put money on it, but I put a little bit more, I guess, faith in than the polling. Because there's actually is like somebody gives you a call, it's like, hey, who are you going to vote for? You can lie to them, you can tell them to fuck off, right? But if you're betting your money, it's a little bit different. Obviously, there's other concern, but there's confounding variables as well. But Tim Walz fell 82% to 41%.
I think it's 42 right now. It's 60 or 59 for Vance.
15, yeah. So I guess he went up to 42. Yeah, he went up to 42. So that's still a loss. 82%. Yeah. Like again, the people who love Tim Walz and love Kamala Harris, yeah, they're going to say that he won. Of course, they're going to say that he won. But the people don't agree with that.
What do you think you really won on? I guess is like, how would you define that answer? Because like this is kind of like one of those metrics with Kamala, right? She didn't have to do much like against Trump because she didn't have to like define it. It's like you're contrasting, comparing it to Biden, right? It's just like you're getting the honeymoon period. With this one, how do you define by metric that Walz win? What like gives you the impression that they can even claim that?
I mean, they're not going to be able to point to any specific instance, right? What they're going to say is, look, Tim Walz was a lot more, he came across as like the Midwestern, the plaid dad, as you said earlier, right? He's the uncle. He's the cool coach. JD Vance is just this weird squirrely cousin that we don't want to invite, right? But like JD Vance didn't come across that way. He came across as like a reasonable guy. The betting odds reflect that. And there was a few flubs, right? I mean, I know it seems like a small thing, and it probably is a small thing, but there's going to be memes made about Tim Walz saying, "Yeah, I'm buds with the school shooters." That was kind of a weird thing to find. That was kind of a flub, right? There's going to be memes about that. I think that JD Vance had a lot of clippable moments. I think that when he was saying, he looked at the camera and he said a lot of clippable moments. One thing that I will criticize him for, and I criticize Kamala Harris for this, and I criticize Walz about this. Donald Trump's better about this, actually, than all three of them. But I'm from a working class family. I'm from the middle class. I grew up in a working class. I grew up I'm just like you. You can trust me. I'm just like you. Absolutely obnoxious. Both the candidates did that. JD Vance did it multiple times. I was disappointed.
Yeah, I hate that shit.
Yeah, I hate that shit. I dock him a full point just for that, honestly. So that's why he's a 7.5. Without any of that, maybe 8.5.
I think that plays though with the American people. They tell them to do that.
Does it? Do people actually resonate? Like maybe I'm just like, again, seeing this from like my point of view, but like, do Americans really look at that and say he's just like me?
I mean, maybe, I don't know. Like, I mean, what is the expression they used to say? A lot of the voters go vote for the guy who they can drink a beer with.
Yeah, but like, maybe, I don't know. Like, I come from a working class family.
He's down to 38% now. 37% chance of winning.
Ooh,
40 cents.
37. What happened?
He lost. Is what happened.
And keep in mind, a lot of the people who are like supporting Walz are the same people that said Biden didn't lose. Biden didn't lose that debate. You just really can't trust people who like anybody who said that Biden didn't lose that debate.
35% chance.
Yeah, you just cannot. Well, okay, that means the polls are okay. The reason why it's dropping, that must mean the polls are coming out that are showing that JD Vance won. Let me look this up real quick. Hold on.
Yeah, I'm gonna put on in the background. If you want me to put, I can put it on the background. I was gonna put the talking heads real quick here. Let's say the same thing we're saying. 31% chance.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, Walz has dropped to a 31% chance. Walz lost the debate. I'm not going to argue with the market here. He didn't do what he needed to do. That's is what it is. Wait. He's back up to no. He says never mind. Still 35. Okay. I moved my mouse, so then it moved back up till before the debate. I'm like, holy shit, he's shutting it. No, he didn't.
He's got
34.
something happening. Oh, he's got it. He's got the juice. Now it went down again.
Yeah, that misspoke comment, by the way, like I want to give him a little bit of credit for being so like straightforward, but man, he could have phrased that differently. That not. Like about the comment he made in China, right? And he's like, oh yeah, I misspoke.
That was a fail.
He and then, really needed to change that.
When he followed up with, I learned a lot about leadership. Like, oh man, that was sus. You learn a lot about leadership from the commies.
Yeah, I don't know. There really does need to be, I think. Now, I'm obviously they didn't really fact check either candidate. I mean, they said a little bit of facts at the end that were like fact checks.
The only person they fact checked was Vance at the beginning.
I think they may have indirectly. It was not nearly as egregious as what they did to Trump, but I think they indirectly fact checked JD Vance once or twice. And the first one, I think JD Vance handled it beautifully by fact checking the moderators. That was good. That was really good. So I think that gives him some points as well. That actually, the fact that he was assertive.
That was a big dunk too.
That was a big dunk for sure. So he gets credit for that. But I really wish that people just like more aggressively fact check this whole like, oh, it doesn't legalize it at 9 months, because it does. You can go to Minnesota's their government website right now and read the bill.
I think he did do that. I don't think he was as ruthless as like say you would have been, but he definitely was like, where does it not say that? It does say that. He's like, why? Tell me how it doesn't say that.
Yeah, but then Walz said like, but this was fact checked at the last debate, and like there wasn't really a follow up. He should have been like, no, like this will be fact checked. This is not the claim that was fact checked at the last debate. This is it is absolutely the case that in the state of Minnesota, you can get an abortion for no reason at all up until the day of birth, and the doctors don't have to even try to save the life of a failed abortion. I obviously phrase failed abortion differently. I don't know how to phrase it better, but that's what it is, right? I mean, that's what the situation is, and that would have been, I think, like a pretty aggressive But again, do you really want to be aggressive on this subject when again, it is for young women? It is like that's their fucking reason. It's their fucking thing. They don't care about the economy. They don't care about democracy or inflation or American security or any of this shit. They have one-track mind. This is their issue. They are by and large, on average, they are one-issue voters, and this is the issue. So you do have to, I guess, approach it with a level of, kid gloves, where it's like, I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to, even if you're making shit up, I'm not going to go super hard because I guess I get it. But fuck, I just wish American politics was different, I guess.
I mean, I think you handled it about as good as you could handle it. Like, I just like, it definitely was coached. He definitely made the coach call.
Yeah.
Right. Like that was, they definitely were like, don't be cutthroat, don't be Trump. The whole debate really kind of exemplifies that, I think.
Yeah. Walz is down to 33%. Also, Jebtan is saying that Vance swept absolute ass beating.
Yeah.
That's his opinion on this. I don't think that it was an absolute ass beating, but I do think that Vance did what he had to do, and I don't think Walz did what he had to do.
I think that if this was a football game, that was like a 32, 14, 32 set. It was, I don't know about ass beating. It was definitely a definitive win. Like a definitive, this was the better person. He won. I don't either of them saying I wouldn't go as far as to say it was just a blowout, but it was like a definitive win. Especially with the miscues by Wall. And the memes are big. Memes are big. That was half the reason people didn't like Vance was the memes. And
true.
The memes are the Trump guy won poses. Dominated.
Frankly, really. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't think there's that much of a would it be, I guess, unfair to say like, oh, he said that he hangs out, he befriends the school shooters. Tim Walz went up on stage and talked about how JD Vance fucks couches.
Yeah, I would almost say that it's fair game.
I think again, is it good? Probably not. But I could see it happening. And I could see people rolling with it, and then if confronted, saying, "Hey, you guys talk shit. This is what you get." I personally don't like to operate that way, but this is
that's good. You don't have to operate that way. I will.
You will.
I'm already gonna run with it. I've already got lines written for it.
Fair enough.
It really, because they've been calling him a couch fucker and a dolphin fucker for like months. Like, does anybody really think this guy's fucking dolphins? No, but like people have this unsavory taste. Like, where did they get this from?
Yeah.
And like the other thing is he mentioned, who stayed up and watched? You missed Dancing with the Stars. Well, you know what else is going on tonight? There was football games for some reason today.
Was there?
Right, and so you're competing with the early first half with football. That can't be good for numbers, right? So a lot of these people are going to see this later, and I think that's going to play badly.
I'm about to ask I'm going to ask a question that's going to make me come across as so unlikable, and I'm very sorry in advance. How are people not interested in like politics? How are people not interested in where our country's going to go? Like,
it's boring.
Is it boring? Like, again, maybe this is just me, unable to like live outside my head, but like, it's one of the few things that I find interesting. What do people do when they're not if they're not thinking about politics? Like they wake up and go to work, and then what do? Like go for a bike ride? Sell granola? What happens in their life?
So think about how insulated it is. I'll give you an example, right? So I talk to people all the time, and people now are starting to know, like in my friend group, hey, this is what he does. I'm like, okay. So they talk to me more about politics than they used to. And it's amazing how, like, not only are people like one-issue voters, but they're like ignorant on issues, or they have like these conceived conceptions, and how much it is social media based. And that being said, let's go to a second side here. I can't even tell you how many times, and I'm in the political realm here on Twitch, right? That people will say, "Oh, have you heard so-and-so's take? Have you heard this take?" And I'm like, I don't even know who the fuck that person is, right? So then I finally added one third leg. I'm like, okay, this is my experience, my lens. I'm basically have a normie staying here for another week, in addition to Modi. So I'm getting to see their different lenses of what they watch. And what's really interesting to me is this other person's like an iPad kid, is what she said the other day. And she'll watch just like all sorts of YouTube. And I don't know any of the people she watches. And it's like their world. And then I've had previous girls stay here, and I don't know any of their YouTube people they watch. And then with Modi, same thing. He's a streamer, so we have crossover even more than a lot of people. And I don't know any of the people he's watching. And so it's like, okay, these people are getting these lenses and the information from these different sources. And like, what would you rather watch if your attention span is small? Would you rather watch something that's going to like play to that with your ADHD? Or do you want to sit here and watch nuanced discussion of policy? And the answer is most of them don't want to watch that shit. It's boring to them. And like Modi, for example, got bored watching college football. Like, and that's a 4-second, you have like 4-second plays. Right? Like, and we're hyped. We're all drinking. We're doing drinking games with it. And he's still getting bored because he's like, eh. And I'm like, yeah, so I think the answer is yes, they get bored. That's the only thing I can come to conclude. Like,
yeah, look, I get it. And again, everybody has their own interests in their own lives. I guess just for me, it's just so, it's just such a big part of my life that I don't know what I would do with my free time. The idea, like having a bunch of people drinking and watching it like a sports game, though, that is a lot of fun. I can definitely empathize with that as well. So yeah, if there's football on, right, and you got the boys coming over, yeah, I don't know.
Well, I also think people are jaded, at least in our generation. Like, I don't want to say this, but so we talked about the polygamy, the polyamory the other night. I think part of the reason why millennials are so open sexually is because they think everything is bad. Just like how many major life events have we lived through? Everything is bad. we vote one way, nothing changes. You know, we vote a different way, nothing changes. And it's like we've steadily seen it get worse. People like, and we're old enough to like remit like, has it ever been good? Kind of like thing, like versus like our parents. You know, they sit here and talk about how shit was great all the time, and it leads to this like defeatist attitude that I think a lot of the younger generations are starting to get. And I don't know. I think that maybe it's they've only experienced negative, or maybe it's that the media is like slanted that way because negative news is more. But I think it leads to a lot of people just going, well, it doesn't matter what I do either way, and so they're not interested. And I think as they get older, I think people are realizing, yeah, it does matter what I do because we have to do something. And by the time they get involved in politics, it's almost like too late to catch up for like the you know what I'm saying? I don't know. It's my working theory. It's really scary. Especially when we have nuanced stuff like Israel, Palestine. And like the Ukraine, and I don't know. I usually hear some of these like, stuff, like people will be telling me at these parties and stuff, and they'll be talking to me about Ukraine. I'm just like, no. They'll tell me something about Israel, Palestine, and I'm just like, absolutely not. Like,
it's just wrong.
You know,
well, how do you fact check them though? Like, because if you fact check people in real life, they get pissy with you. So what do you do?
Yeah. You like casually explain how they're misinterpreted. Or like, well, why do you think that? And then you like go down. Well, let me tell you what I know. Yeah, they're like, sell them. It's just sales. At least that's how I approach it.
What do you think about? Yeah, we can hop in. Yeah.
Get some. I want to hear what the crying is over there. So let's jump.
Hello.
Howdy.
Debates tend not to matter because if you're just focused on winning a debate optically, you don't tend to nail your win condition. Vance had a couple of win conditions here, and he obliterated them. One, obviously, was to look more personable and more empathetic, and he hit that. Even the post-debate, commentators were like, I'm getting texts from people saying that Vance seems so much more empathetic and emotional here.
He did really well in that. Exactly.
Yeah, second was just to give a buttoned-up, fact-based look at a Trump campaign that, Trump's not really capable of giving. And then a third one that I didn't even realize was a win condition until I watched it unfold before me was he got Waltz to say, like, I agree with you. And yeah, we agree. Like, there's a lot of agreement here. And what I didn't realize, I was like, wait a minute. Waltz is terrible for the Kamala campaign because her whole campaign is based on doomsday predictions and vilification of Donald Trump and his campaign. And Vance just sat there and had Waltz for 2 hours basically saying, yeah, we're not that different in what we want. It seems like we have a lot of similar goals. It seems like there's a lot of coalition building to be had here. And I'm like, and that's good, right? We should have presidential candidates that want to be like that. Unfortunately, the strategists for the Democrat side have leaned the entire campaign on Trump is not like us. Trump's campaign is not like ours. And if you vote Trump in, it's doomsday.
Well, my response to that, because I think you're right overall, that the cordiality was in stark contrast to a lot of the messaging. But this was on both sides, right? Like, I think that this was a win for civility politics in a very real way. I think it showed the power of it especially on the Republican side. And I think it stands in stark contrast to how Trump handled himself. I know we had you on for the Trump thing, and you thought that Kamala didn't hit her win condition. We disagreed on that, but we agree here tonight. I think Vance did hit his win condition. The one thing where he could have failed, but Waltz didn't push him enough on it, was the 2020 answer. I think that was Vance's weakest point, and Waltz could have gone in for the kill, but he was going for civility too much, and it didn't hit.
Yeah. But that was a big Waltz win condition, was confirming the doomsday hypothesis, but instead he really didn't. He really made it seem like doomsday hypothesis was all a strategy game.
He could have. This is a frustrating bit.
He could. You're right. You're 100% right. He could have.
The 2020 answer, the answer that Vance gave initially was bad. It was a bad non-answer. it needed to be.
It took
pointed out.
Vance too long to jump on that because he did jump on it, but it took him. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It took Waltz, too long to jump on that, and so he didn't get enough time to let the audience marinate on that idea.
Let's get some other people in. We got some other people want to spout off. We got Unicat Ninjaxes. Is that how you say your name?
Whatever.
Okay, we'll call you Uni.
We actually met, you and I actually met on a Pride panel a few years back. So,
but
and
it's just been a while.
I realized you had a shirt, but I'm like, oh, I'll join. So,
thank you for being here. We have Lactoid here, and we have Admiral Gibbs. Let's actually start with Uni, okay? Because I'm pretty sure I know what Gibbs is gonna say. Pretty sure I know what Lactoid's gonna say, but I don't know what you're gonna say. What are your thoughts?
I don't know how to feel about this. Like, I think I recall somebody saying that Walz said he wasn't a good debater. So I'd give him that. But, like, as for how this is going to affect, like, the outcome, I feel like it won't move the needle. But I also feel like this was extremely dangerous because Vance kind of looks like a normal person here. Like, with his agreeing with Walz. And it's like, it's going to make people who were maybe originally voting for Trump being like, oh, it's not that bad. I'll go and vote for him. Instead of Walz looking like, towards the end, Vance really started to sound like an NPC, but it was a bit too late. So, I really wanted Walz. I was expecting rally Walz, not this like civil trying to agree with everybody.
Yeah,
Walz.
I think that the civility can work. It worked for Vance. It worked for Vance 100%. There's a way you can do it. I think Vance did it correctly. Waltz kind of fumbled it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. We'll get into it as we go. Lactoid, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think JD Vance won the debate. I think you're right that it was relatively civil. I think they both did well. But I think that JD, Polymarket had Tim Walz as of a couple days ago at 82% favored to win. Currently, he's sitting at 36%. So he has a massive drop-off, right? He has a bigger drop-off than Trump had going into the debate with Kamala Harris. And I pointed out, like, the whole time, Polymarket odds were not favoring Donald Trump during that debate. But that drop wasn't nearly as significant as this. And I think the reason for that is that the media has been painting J.D. Vance as this weird psychopath that's obsessed with children and obsessed with, like, authoritarian, controlling people, etc. But he came across as a normal person. He came across as incredibly moderate. He came across incredibly normal. He spoke well. He's an eloquent person. There wasn't an audience there to, I think, throw things off. And the American people saw that, and I think that's going to affect things. Look, I didn't think that he went in hard on issues that I wanted him to. He didn't go nearly as hard on J.D. Vance's lies about his abortion policy. There were lies
You mean Walz's?
Tim Walz. Yes, Tim Walz. If I said Vance, I meant Tim Walz's lies on the abortion policy that he signed into law in 2023. He didn't even bring up Kamala's ascendance into as the candidate when the conversation of democracy came up. He didn't bring up court backing, but he did bring up censorship, which I thought was good. And I think that Tim Walz said some things during the debate that were concerning, right? Oh, not hate speech. Oh, fire in a crowded theater. Concerning.
Walz fumbled that so hard because it was a distraction tactic because he brought up censorship when the question was, would you certify the votes, right? Would you certify the 2020 election results? But this was a great tactic. And gang, this is the importance of why you debate in hostile locations, right? This is why it's important to talk to people who are outside of your echo chamber. So you know how to react and how to deal with it when someone tries to non-answer you and then bullshit you with something else entirely, right? Which is what Vance did, and it worked, unfortunately. He was like, well, the 2020 stuff, I'm not going to really answer that question. I'm looking at the future. Let's talk about censorship. And Walz bit on that, and he should not have bit on that.
Well, it's not just that, though, Wick.
We're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about your non-answer here. And unfortunately, he had some own goals on when he did talk about the fucking censorship thing.
Yes, like he bit on it.
He had some own goals throughout a lot of the debate.
He bid on it,
Yeah,
but
it
he
was-
bid
it
on
was
it, and
unfortunate.
he bid on it in a very bad way, right? He
Yes,
he
he did.
defended censorship, and I think that's concerning, and I think that they're going to hold that against him. Another thing that J.D. Vance didn't bring up at all were the economic policies, like specifically the proposed economic policies of Kamala Harris that are so unpopular amongst the very experts that she was that Tim Walz was appealing to.
You know what?
And so,
You know what
but that was
strikes
never
me?
brought up once, and I think that
Here's
again,
what- no.
I don't know why, but he didn't
on
bring it
that
up.
subject, going in here, I was asking my chat, right? Do you think that they were going to bring up the couch fucking thing? Do you think that they were going to bring up the Walz's military record stuff? Neither of that got brought up. So
Well, they bring up the couch fucking. That's
Well, no, he was saying like bring
That'd be
up
weird
the
to bring
fact
up.
that they were making jokes about it on the
Yeah.
debate stage.
Yeah.
When it's
Like-
like a pretty gross and like debased rumor kind of thing.
yeah, like basically the reason how low were they going to go, and neither went low. Neither one.
Yeah, I have an answer as to why, but I know Gibbs still has
Yeah,
to
but
go.
yeah,
so-
well, let's get through it, right? Let's get through it before we get there. And $5 from Audacity. Joe streaming in from Garlic Jr.'s Dead Zone.
hold up.
Don't know
Let's-
what
I'll
that
be
means.
right back.
but
Dragon
thank
Ball
you.
Z reference. Come on.
Okay, I just don't know. Gibbs, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So if I was gonna score like a football game, I would score that 35 Vance, 17 Walz. So Walz showed up, but it took a whooping. Like that's what happened. It was real simple. He owned gold on himself. The CCP report just came out. It's being talked about. I sent it out to a few of y'all, and nobody really bid on that. Guess what? It came up in the debate. Damn, 2 for 2 on things in the debate. Gibbs is done now, prediction wise. And guess what? Boom goes the dynamite. Walz said, "Hey, I learned a lot about leadership from the CCP. Crazy stuff, boys. He learned a lot about leading people from the commies." And then he turned right around and wants to talk about government-sponsored housing. Oh man, that's sus. While Kamala's sitting here talking about the Soviet-style price bread lines. I think that bringing that up, I think that there's a lot of hot button word choices Vance steered away from. He let Trump be the attack dog. I think Lactoid said this actually on our stream earlier, about the Trump is coming in as being the fire starter. Vance is walking behind him with a fire extinguisher. I think that's a very good analogy. Vance didn't come off as weird. He seemed very nice. He was cordial. He seemed like a normal dude, and he dunked on him early with that while being polite to the moderator, and I think that was major points. All around, I think he
disagree
did
with the
dominate.
moderator thing. I think the trying to play the moderator there was kind of a weak move.
Wonderful. It
He
was
did-
maybe
he
it was
came
maybe the
across well,
perfect.
too.
It came across well. We were watching the what was it?
Oh, the
Polyhop,
Vance interaction?
and it dropped immediately for
yeah.
for him. So statistically, the betting odds say that you're wrong, Wick. So I mean, you can think that, but the numbers are saying
I
you're
thought
wrong.
that was
So,
the W of the debate.
that was the dunk
interaction
of
with
the night.
monitor.
That one, and
because he not only exposed that they're willing to break the rules that they set and asked for, but also that they're doing it to kind of lie to the audience on behalf of one side.
Do you guys think that the moderators were biased in this?
Dramatically less so. If they were dramatically less so than the
nearly
last
as much. I
Yeah,
think
not as
also
much
after
as the last
Vance.
one.
I think after Vance,
That
gave
was
the
a
hands-
biased move. That was one.
Yeah,
Rick,
after
don't-
Vance,
but you're
gave the
moving
hands,
the
they backed
goalposts
off.
though, because none of us are making a claim definitively on the totality of the debate. But that fact check was unequivocally,
Creme de la creme.
irrefutably biased to hold water for the Kamala side, and Vance literally pointed out why.
It
So
also set the tone. They stopped doing that.
If you don't agree with that, I would also say that's probably why you don't think that was a win for Vance, because I'm guessing you didn't listen to what he actually said in his
They cut
response.
off his mic, so it was very hard to hear.
No, they
You
didn't
can-
cut
No,
off.
they
They cut off Walz's mic because
Yeah,
Walz
that-
kept going back and forth,
Well,
and
no,
then
Well, they cut
and they
off
also
both of
cut
their
his. They also
Yeah,
cut off
Vance
his
cut off
mic.
both the mics.
Vance-
Yeah, but it was during
You-
Walz
his
was like
mic-
getting
His
aggressive.
mic was
It was
on
possible I
for
missed
his.
the answer, but
Yes.
yeah,
No,
I
well,
don't
you
think that
did,
was
yeah,
a-
'cause
I
you're
don't think
saying
that
you
was a
didn't hear
W.
it.
I don't think
Yeah,
that was a
I mean,
W.
but once
My
again,
end.
Wick,
Definitely was not a
say-
W because
hold
what
on.
he was
The
saying
point
was
is to say you're
fucking
wrong.
I mean,
You're
Lactoid
arguing
was
not with us.
Lactoid was referring to pretty concrete, market moves, right after it happened. He pointed out that they were interrupting him in a way that was against the rules and to deceive the audience, because he pointed out that they were like, oh, well, Haitian, there are a lot of legal Haitian immigrants over there in Springfield, Ohio. And he's talking about a bunch of legal immigrants. And then he pointed out the fact that they're legal because you can download a temporary legal protection app and hit a button on your phone and become a legal citizen. And that's literally what
Anytime-
he's
Came across as authoritative.
Just to add one
Yeah.
last thing to what I was
I
saying,
know
though,
that,
and I'll be
look,
done.
Okay, quickly,
Yeah,
and then
yeah, quickly. Yeah, sorry. I also wanted to say the only issue I was having, and I think Nocto and I talked about this, was the abortion one, right? He wasn't really as cutthroat when it came to the 9-month thing. He could have been. However, I think it was a strategic play, and he came off much more likable. And honestly, getting past that issue, which is the Republicans' weakest issue, was a very strategic, and I think it played well. I mean, and once again, the odds reflected that.
I think I can't speak to the betting odds. I didn't watch the betting odds.
You should.
But as a viewer, right? No, I think that the watching the betting odds is probably not the move.
It's
It's the only thing you can do in the midst of the debate, though, because they're
It's
not
like
polling
watching-
after every
It
response.
might.
in the
It's
debate.
also
Hold on,
it's
there. I don't
stats.
know if organizations or if the media companies still do this, but I remember back in 2008, they didn't have betting odds. What they had was a focus group, and the focus group would rate live. So you would have
Betting
these
odds is way
things
better
going
than a
up in the
focus group.
stream.
Yeah, it's way
They
more.
You know
still-
how betting wait, no,
Yeah, I
stop, stop. Do you know why? Do you know how betting odds move, Wick? Vegas moves betting odds because people start putting a bunch
right.
of money on
Yeah,
one
they put
side,
money.
which means instead of a focus group that's just sort of 50 people willy-nilly watching and being asked questions, you have people who are willing to put their dollars on their opinion, giving their
Absolutely
opinion
correct.
and moving betting lines.
But
That's why betting odds are way better than 50
the
people that
problem
they've
with that is it becomes
pre-selected in a group.
they want to win the money rather than be right,
Yes.
and so that they can play with the
That
odds.
is
If they're
That's
right,
right.
they win the
How
money.
would they win? Yeah, how
So-
would they win money, Wick? Only if they're correct, and it's actually a win for Vance. So if they're putting money on Vance, they only win money if Vance does actually make
Yeah,
a
if he's
difference.
deemed
They
the winner.
lose their
It's just
money.
like-
They lose
Yeah.
all their money if they're wrong.
Yeah, they don't
Yeah.
have any influence on who actually wins. This
Sure,
is just
but one of the
real-time
things with
analysis.
betting is, if you keep seeing, like, nothing succeeds like success. So if the only win condition for the game is you want to be in the most popular bucket, right? You want to be where most of the people put their odds on, and you see everyone betting on one candidate, you obviously bet on that candidate too.
But that's
That's
not what
wrong.
happened. Wait,
That's
hold
wrong.
on,
That's
wait.
totally wrong. Hold on,
That's
no,
not
that's wrong.
what happened here, though. Hold on, real quick, because
That's also wrong.
remember,
That's not how
right
sports betting
before,
works.
but even if that was the case, right before
I
the
wasn't
debate,
watching live, I can't-
right, again today,
I gotta answer after this,
October 1st, right before the debate, Walls was 72% favored. 72%. He was the one that everyone was getting on board with on betting. And then as the debate was going on,
I'm gonna
he
say one more
dropped
thing
like a
about betting
rock
after
down to
that.
33.
Yes, because as I said, Vance won the debate. So yes, but we're talking about a very specific
but-
period of time.
But hold on, but what you're also not factoring in, Wick, is
Hold on.
you're missing the biggest part of the betting
Let
odds.
me respond on my own show. Oh my God.
All right,
Okay,
go ahead. I want to
here's
respond
the
after you.
deal, right? When you yell at the moderators or you try to play the moderators are being mean to me, it always comes off as a bitch move. Always.
No,
Wrong.
But that's why he didn't.
Hold on.
No, Wick.
Losing flag.
That's how
That's
Trump
why he
won the
didn't do that.
2016 primary.
Hold on.
Yeah,
Well, no,
also,
'cause
I want to
Trump won
explain
it
one
'cause
more reason.
He didn't do that. He didn't say you guys are being so mean to me. He said, I thought it was against the rules to fact check, but since you're gonna let me fact check your fact check, and then he hit them with the fact check that exposed to the audience while his mic was still on, he got this out, that exposed to the audience that they were giving misinformation in order to support one side of the
Hold on,
argument.
one more thing on this.
I'll go back and look at it because I didn't
Well,
hear that answer.
It was purposefully deceptive.
I also want to
information that they
explain.
gave that he pointed out why it was purposefully deceptive.
Well, okay, one more thing on the betting odds thing, and this is actually really important. Y'all clearly, Wick, you don't understand how sports betting works, right? Because
I don't
the key,
split that, so
fair enough. That's fair enough. I do a lot of sports betting, and one of the ways you do it with MMA sports betting, if you want to do this accurately, you want to like probably win more than lose, is you bet the odds for the card, and then what you do is you go through the card, which is usually about between 10 and 14 fights, and you'll go and say, hey, here's my outlier, right? This guy's scheduled 7-1 odds. He's probably a 3-1 underdog or a 4-1 underdog, right? And you bet that outlier fight and hope that one wins big, while the rest of them should win and cover your bet. So even what you said, you would never do what you said and put your money in the most likely to win bet, because we saw somebody with a 75% win percentage. That's a 8-1 odds.
They don't
You would
have
want to put bet on the other.
odds.
So you're wrong. You're just wrong. That's not how sports betting works. And it's a definitive measure showing that this is a major tangible change in real time. And that's why these sports betting websites are such a good indicator, and they're better than actual
How'd they
polling.
do with this
Don't
one?
listen to gamblers about betting strategies, just to be clear.
Yeah, well,
And
hey, listen,
how,
I'm just
how
telling
did
you
they
how it
win-
works.
how did they do with the 2020 election, right? How were their accuracy? That's what I want to see. $5 from Audacity. You know what always is a sure bet? Giving me money like Audacity has tonight. Thank you for the $5. Wall should have busted out the hot sauce. It worked so well for Hill Dog. Fair enough.
Yeah.
So I know that Jebtan has answered this question. He says that he thinks that, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm misquoting you, right? But you think
Mm-hmm.
that this debate actually might move the needle.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, I saw some for two reasons. I saw not only the win conditions thing, which is sort of my blanket debate hypothesis on how debates work and how they're valued, but also I saw some, I forget who it was one of the liberal media outlets that said our pre-debate polls are showing that this vice presidential debate will actually move the needle, kind of regardless how it goes. And Vance's ability to hit and then almost manufacture and then hit multiple win conditions throughout the debate, I think just
we'll
add on top of that.
see. My instinct and my gut says nah.
Can I answer the
But
question
we'll
for you,
see.
by the way? The betting odds in 2020 was only putting about a 33% chance that Trump would win, with a 66% chance of Biden winning.
Interesting.
How was
You're accurate.
2016, again, that was the wild. I don't know what the odds were then, but that was the wild one that took everybody by surprise. So it wouldn't surprise me if that was different, but I'll look it up.
But as for the needle push thing, I think that this is kind of what I told you on your show earlier, Wick, is that Vance has been the loser, right? And all he had to do is have a decent performance. And since he had more than a decent performance, he had an outstanding performance, in my opinion. I think it moves the needle a lot, especially when you have this contrast to Trump of this nice, respectful, young gentleman who's sitting here, seems like he cares about the American people, well articulated, didn't self-own, and he comes
I
out
agree
there.
with that. I think there are a lot
I
of
think he moves
people
the needle
who
a lot.
wish they could flip the ticket right now. I think there's a lot of people sitting at, like a lot of Republican strategists saying, man, I wish Vance was at the top and not this Trump guy.
Well, I don't think
I don't know that.
I don't think Trump is a sustainable thing long term, right? So I'm not exactly sure, because Trump has even articulated that if he loses this election, he's probably done. And then even if he wins this election, he's done. So I think
He said that
that,
in 2020.
well, I mean, he said this like last month that he's pretty much doubtful. But
He
the point
said
I'm trying to
that in
make,
2020.
what is
I mean,
wet?
we're assuming he'd
The
live
NBA's
another
fixed.
4 years anyway, so.
Yeah, I mean,
Actually,
like,
that is also the big factor.
yeah, but again, like,
Well, let's hear what Joe has to say. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
I say all that to say like a few things. One, I don't think that Walz had anything to lose in his performance here, and JD Vance had everything to gain because of the fact that the ways that both of these individuals are campaigning, Walz and Vance are very disaggregated. JD Vance is going for more of that individualistic route of making sure that there are events for himself so that he has the opportunity to be his own voice, which it kind of worked, but he had the same identity problem that most vice presidents have, where it's just like, okay, who are these people? So I think for JD, it was a matter of, and some people said this, like showing that, hey, I may have said controversial things in the past. I may have said some things that might even be morally reprehensible on either side, but you look at it. But at the end of the day, I can make mistakes no different than anybody else, and you should still give me a chance to spite those mistakes. I think if that was the goal that he was running into, I think he succeeded. And then for Walz, he just kind of had to not have any gaffe that puts him on. And both of them had both of these challenges. You don't want to be on the debate in such a way where a gaffe that you do in the conversation takes attention away from either campaign. I think both of those individuals succeeded. I think when it comes to clips and things that are highlightable from the conversation, there wasn't much really to be had. Obviously, there's a few clear gaffes. I think the biggest one is going to be that exchange between the moderators and him. But even then, that's just like a small flashpoint that doesn't even take that much attention away from Donald Trump.
No, the biggest gaffe of tonight that's going to be played over.
I was friends with school shooters.
Yes, that's it. You got it.
Yeah, I can't wait to use that because it's going to be
funny,
used.
but I don't know if that moves anybody.
It moves them. No, it
I don't think
absolutely.
any of these move anyone.
Absolutely. Because look how important memes were for Vance's image. Everybody's sitting here and memed about him being a dolphin fucker and a cow fucker, and now, yeah, it was a whole thing.
Yes, he admitted to looking up dolphin porn.
Yeah, whatever. That's not the point. The point is, I've heard these memes for months. I've heard these memes. Heard the memes,
Yes, he did.
and people have this false. Even my parents who don't watch social media were like, "Why does everybody hate Vance? I know everybody hates Vance," and I'm like, "Because they think he's a dolphin fucker." And like, then I have to explain the meme to them, and they're like, "Oh, okay." And they're like, they ask my cousins and shit, and it spreads. Guess what? This is going to be used by everybody, and you know what? I say good because it's time the Republicans play those tactics back against the dishonest Dems.
As if they're
Guess
not
what?
doing it all the
He
time.
he is a friend of school
Ryzen-
shooters. He wants to take away
Ryzen
guns
again,
from
5
hardworking American owners.
more gifted Wick TV memberships. Look at you making the sure
Wait, bro.
bet. Thank you for the gifted.
I'm not
Admiral
convinced.
Gibbs, are you for real?
Yeah, he wants to take guns away from hardworking Americans to defend themselves. So it sounds to me like he's a friend of people who want to use guns for illegal purposes. That's exactly.
Source? Dude, trust me.
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
also
a-
can't wait to see that photo of Kamala hunting.
Oh yeah,
I'm not convinced.
The
I
gun
don't think
control,
Kamala- like,
He
I
got
think
caught
Kamala-
on national
Yeah.
television. He said,
I
"I
thi- I think-
misspoke." That's
I
an
think
oath.
Kamala
You lost.
Harris is probably just like most liberal gun owners I've seen, where they just have it. It's in a box somewhere, and if they use it, they use it. I don't think she's
No, he
this
said she's a hunter.
recreational.
They said that she's
I-
a hunter.
I do not believe that
Did
she's
he
some
did
type
he
of
lie
recreational
again?
hunter.
So he lied
She
again.
also-
So you're saying he
She
lied
also
again?
worked at she also worked at McDonald's and worked with the
Yeah.
fries making Whoppers, dude. So
And
it's,
it's like,
you know,
and at the end of the day, it's like, who cares?
I
Like,
care
who,
quite a
like,
bit. So did she lie or
The,
not
the,
lie?
the gun control answer, by the way, was also all over the place. Like he said, you know, we don't want to fearmonger. We're not coming from your guns or whatever. But by the end of the answer, he was saying, you know, sometimes it's just the gun. Sometimes it is just the gun. Okay, so it's just the guns, right? So you want to take them away. The thing that you
Anyway,
started
yeah,
off
he
this
wants to
answer
take
by
the guns
saying
away.
that you don't want to take them away.
But
Right
after
after
he
he lied,
also
right after he lied.
he also
Yeah,
own
the
gold
gun-
himself
the gun
in that answer by
was-
pointing out that the vast majority that stat they use of children dying to guns is vastly a mental health issue, and agreed with Vance on that. And so he sort of owned gold, and even in that
Waltz-
part of the conversation too.
Walls tried. I don't know if this was a strategy or if this is just Walls. And I said this right after the debate. Walls tried to be human in this. I think he was just a guy, right? And giving
Sure.
his thoughts. Whether that plays well or not, I don't think it does. I think that.
I mean, Vance did too, and he did it better.
No,
there's
Vance-
more to gain. There's more to gain
Yeah,
from
Vance was
Walsh
getting-
being
yeah.
ordinary, because you can replicate that. You can replicate. Democrats can replicate a Tim Walz. They can't replicate a Kamala Harris. So, and Kamala Harris still has an authenticity problem. She still has the problem of appearing inauthentic, appearing canned, and appearing superficial. And she does not really do a good job at dodging the allegation. So I think
to
Tim
be honest,
Walz.
she's
think
got
that,
nothing
like, if
but
I may-
problems as a
if I
candidate.
may-
She's terrible.
This
Sure,
is one
yeah.
of the reasons, right? And because I think you're hitting mostly like 99% true, Jeb10, 99% true on what you're saying. That JD Vance basically he took an opportunity that was given to him by the Democrats, painting him as a couch fucker, right? This is the problem, okay? And Democrats fall into this trap all the time. They think they do this thing where when they want to do the go low stuff, it just ends up helping the Republicans, because the Republicans can play this civility game better than the Democrats can in a lot of ways. And
I disagree that actually changes their at-large strategy, because their entire campaign has been lying about the Trump campaign and saying that he's going to end the world if he
that's not my
president.
point.
So,
No, that's not my point.
No.
You're missing my point here. Okay. My point here isn't that this should change or that this will change how Democrats handle Republicans. My point is it should, in the future, going forward, be a warning to that kind of politic, right? To
Democrats
like,
don't know how to punch right. That's basically what I hear you saying.
I think a really
The reason
important
I would-
poll.
Not to cut you off, but
let's give
I think
it to Vigilante real quick.
Yeah,
He's
sorry.
been trying to get in. Go ahead.
The reason I would say that strategy didn't work tonight is because Tim Walz is too nice. If Walz would have pushed Vance harder, he would have looked like the fucking schizo poster he normally fucking looks like whenever he gives his fucking speeches and shit. Like he looks
Would
like
he?
when he like when
No,
you
I
push-
tried to warn-
when
Hey,
you-
hold on. Vigilante.
push
I'll let you respond.
Republicans
I'll let
like
you respond.
that-
I'll let you respond. But just real
Yeah.
quick.
I'm just straightening my
Right?
back. I'm not like getting ready to go.
Yeah, Vigilante, just real quick to push back on you. Like, I don't know. I think actually Walz matching energy was kind of the move, but unfortunately Walz was in a bad position because all JD Vance had to do was not be crazy.
yes, but
All he had to do was not be crazy, and as long as he could,
And he
keep
was not
the
crazy.
Opponent, yeah, and as long as he could keep the opponent until the end, but then Waltz fumbled the ball on that. But as long as Waltz
and
could as long as Vance could make sure that the opponent didn't egg him on into being crazy, he wins that condition. And Waltz just wasn't the guy. And I think that Vance, for all his faults, I don't think there's someone who could have done that, except for maybe like, I don't know, professional Troll Destiny or something. I don't know.
No, even him. I tried to warn people about this. I shared something on my Twitter, and you can find it, where Vance is in an interview, and it's a very combative interview. The interviewer is being very combative. I think I might have shared it with you. I definitely shared it with Rampage Paul. And I was like, this is good news for the Republicans in a debate, because the interview is super combative. The interviewer was basically just throwing questions that were accusations in the form of questions. And Vance was like calmly and very kindly fucking-mantling her. It wasn't because Waltz is too nice. It's because Vance is, what people didn't realize, he's incredible. Trained. He's incredibly good at disarming people who try to be too aggressive with him, and just looking way nicer than them, regardless of how nice they are. You could have had Trump on the other side there, and I think JD Vance would have trouble, or Trump would have trouble going after JD Vance
Trump
the way that he usually went after people.
But
I think that goes to what I was saying about JD. Yeah.
Real quick, $10, sorry, from Audacity. Waltz matching energy was not the move, LMAO. A terrific episode of Whose White Guy Is It Anyway? Vance beat Waltz at every turn of being the amicable guy in the debate. Well, thank you.
Yeah, I think Waltz was just outmatched. And I think this is where I'll just quickly touch on, since we're talking about Vance's strategy, and what you were asking at the beginning, which is like, Vance didn't really take, and Lactoid had this criticism too, Vance didn't really take all the biggest shots he could have taken, all this stuff. And I think that was purposeful. Gibbs made a football metaphor, and I think that's a good metaphor to make, because what Vance did was football strategy, right? You establish the run, you play conservatively, you hammer the rock, you control the clock, and you see if you can get ahead that way. And then if you do, you stick with that. You just keep rolling. You keep playing conservative. Then once you start to increase that gap, you start to open up the playbook. And that's what we saw in the debate, was up till the halfway point in the debate, Vance was probably up by 3 or up by 7. And then after that halfway point, he kind of got another score, and he started opening up the playbook. He started attacking the Kamala campaign a little bit more. He started to take some more shots down the field, so to speak. But you don't want to start playing loose with... No, I don't think you used to play loose with the ball at that point.
Look, I'll give you the last question, right? I'll give you the last question as an example of this, right?
Sure.
I don't think this was I'm not good at the football analogies because I don't play football. But
that was a garbage time touchdown, is what we call that last one.
But here's the deal. At the end of the debate, with the last question about the 2020 election, and this is what he used his attacks for. His attacks were all to distract from his answers, right? He would do the jujitsu thing where you turn it around. Because let's be real, his 2020 answer was a bad answer. It was bad.
It was a garbage time touchdown. So what happened was, what a garbage time touchdown is when an NFL team...
I'm explaining it to you. He's going to learn it real quick. Learn.
When an NFL team is up by like 2 or 3 scores, and there's like 2 minutes on the clock, and there's really not enough time for the opposing offense to possess the ball long enough to make up those scores, you can play a little bit looser, and your defense starts to relax a little bit, because you don't need to protect the game as much anymore, because the game is in the bag. And what Waltz needed was a touchdown, a successful onside kick, then another touchdown, and then maybe he could have gotten a tie. And he just got a touchdown. That's what we call a garbage time touchdown. The defense is relaxed. The situation is a lot lower stakes for the other team, and so you're able to score some touchdowns easier than you could have the whole rest of the game. And that's why you'll see games where you look at the score, they seem like they weren't that big of a blowout at the end. But if you watch the game, you see one team was firmly in control of the game from the start all the way through to the finish, and that's what happened in this debate. Vance was controlling this all the way through the finish, and he didn't want to change his strategy mid-debate and risk losing.
I'll give it to Lactoid in a second, but $10 from Artemis Fowl. I remember Wick telling me on stream that the Vance choice would hurt Republicans and Waltz was a benefit for Kamala Harris. I'm here to say I told you so. Dems may have slipped further behind now. So 2 things on that, and then I'll let Lactoid go. Dems are not behind right now. I don't think they're going to slip further behind. And I don't think that overall, while Vance did win this debate, it has to be measured over the harm that Vance does in every other scenario and has done with every other scenario. So no, you can't get to tell me I told you so because you're still not right just because I had one good debate. Let's give it to Lactoid. Go ahead.
I think he's mitigated a lot of that harm that you're referring to, because a lot of the harm that J.D. Vance brought was people having this misconception of him as a weirdo. And he did not come across as a weirdo, and I think a lot of people are going to remember that. But I want to disagree a little bit about this idea of, it was a garbage time touchdown. Because I think it was a flub. Because here's what happened. The conversation became about censorship, and Tim Walz said some pretty scary shit about censorship, right? And there's concerns there, right? He talked about hate speech. He brought up the fire in a crowded theater example, right? Again, classic things that people who are opposed to the First Amendment bring up to try to oppose the First Amendment. And you know that, like, this is going to be the thing now when people think about that question and people try to run that question of, like, oh, here's the question, what was the answers, right? What are they going to play? They're going to play the fact that Tim Walz is bad on the First Amendment, and they're going to put that on every fucking ad. And of course, like that's a major issue.
Walz flubbed it.
Yeah, he flubbed it. So I wouldn't even call it a touchdown. I think what it was is he was behind two. He was behind two touchdowns, and like, you know, they were going to and he got fucking sacked. That's like, I think the better comparison. He got fucking sacked, and they are out of time.
The January 6th question, I think, was the garbage time touchdown where he said, did Donald Trump lose the election? And J.D. Vance didn't answer it, and he said that's a telling non-answer. That was what I was referring to as the garbage time touchdown. But you're right.
But he was even able to flip that. He was even able to flip that.
Here's the thing. This is why the football analogy doesn't work. Because here's the thing. The football analogy doesn't work because you can't score points after the game in football, where you absolutely can, and you can reframe, and you can score points well after the debate.
Well, yeah, you're talking about the season, Wick. We're talking about the game. You can have a bad loss and then make it to playoffs and make it to the bowl and then win the whole thing, but he lost this game.
And this wasn't the strongest, and it could have been much stronger. I agree, right? He messed up, but he did get in one swipe that I think is going to be played over and over and over again.
Oh, I don't think voters, like undecided voters at this point, are not confused. No,
wait. I want to know
how Trump feels about.
Let me ask Wick. When you say the one clip, what clip are you referring to?
When Walz asked him, right? Walz asked him, do you think Trump won, or who do you think won in 2020? I forget the exact phraseology he has. But he basically dodged the answer. He didn't answer the question. And then Walz said, that's a damning non-answer. That clip, exchange, that's going to be played.
Can I push a little bit?
Let me respond to this particular. I agree with you. I remember that. I remember that part. But the problem is what immediately came afterwards was J.D. Vance saying, well, I know you're saying that, and we can talk a lot about this, and here are my thoughts on that, but you're not answering this question about censorship. And then when Tim went to answer, to give him credit, he did go to answer, but his answer was in line with what a lot of moderates and conservatives fear from the Democrat Party, which is censorship on social media, right? There was one part in particular in which J.D. Vance said, like, no, you have a right to say what you want on social media, and you have a right to express your opinion. And what was Tim Walz's response to that? Well, not if it's hate speech. Well, conservatives have been, censored over quote unquote hate speech for how long now? And a lot of people are iffy on that. They don't like the idea of hate speech becoming the new reason for censorship. I think they flipped it.
Gay people should die is not quote unquote hate speech, and I see a lot of that. So
hate speech is free. Well, first of all, I'm guessing under your position that would be hate speech, but hate speech is free speech. Just to be clear.
Okay, that doesn't mean it's good.
But it's free.
It doesn't mean you should be able to get legally penalized, and the government should be talking to social media companies to get you banned.
Gibbs, give us the Gibbs. Oh wait, no, I was going to give it to Lois and then to
Lois.
Gibbs.
Wow, it's all good. No, I think I don't.
Sorry.
It is almost midnight.
I don't think that. Yeah, it's all good. I don't necessarily. I think the undecided voter right now is fairly fixed, but just not in a way that's clearly articulated. NPR kind of elicited this to some of their conversations that they had with undecided voters, where I think their decisions are decided and it's going to be kind of predicted on the last voting cycle that they did. I don't necessarily think that people who are in this undecided fence really care if J.D. Vance thinks that the election was stolen or otherwise. I don't necessarily think that's a powerful point the Democrats drive on. Because I think what they're trying to do, which J.D. Vance is doing a good job at distinguishing himself, is that he's not a MAGA Republican. He never was. He was just a person. He's a person toeing the line, and by toeing the line requires allegiance to Donald Trump. But I think a better analogy to give here about J.D. Vance's role, kind of like, I'll use a football analogy. I'm so sorry, Wick. It's kind of like Carson Wentz to Patrick Mahomes in the situation, where Carson Wentz has established himself as being a capable quarterback. He is currently a backup, but if Patrick Mahomes gets hurt for whatever reason, it's reasonable to say that maybe Wentz could squeeze out a couple of wins, but not enough wins that would draw attention away from your starter. I think that's what J.D. Vance had to do in this debate, where he just has to be like, look, I just got to exist, and I have to exist in a way that doesn't have Trump talking about me. And if he can do that, and we'll see in the next couple of weeks, I think there'll be a net positive for him. Where for Tim Walz, he is almost in a symbiotic relationship with the Harris campaign. He doesn't really distinguish himself as something of difference. He tries to appeal to this Midwestern thing. That doesn't necessarily work. He tries to appeal to being working class. That doesn't necessarily work. He tries to appealing to being somebody of labor. That doesn't necessarily work. Climate doesn't work. He's just in this weird relationship with being the VP to Harris because they're not being clear about their substantive policy. And then he doesn't have the ability to articulate those differences, like, this is what it actually is, because that's not his job. So, and then if he does that, then if he says something wrong, then it messes up the entire institution of this campaign.
Here's fair. I hear you on this. I don't understand the analogy, but I'm sure my audience does. But here's what I'm surprised.
It was a great one for someone who's informed on football. He's 100% right. The Trump campaign is like, we're confident in the guy we got.
Before you go on about the football shit, I don't
Harris
care.
is like, yeah, we have a guy.
You're gonna win then. I'm going after him.
Yeah, but here's the thing. One of the questions that they alluded that they were going to bring up, but they never did, was the question about the dock worker strike. Unless I missed that, right? Which is possible I did.
They glossed right over it.
Yeah. I really wish they would have really gotten into what each candidate would do in an extended dock worker strike. I would really have loved to hear the answer for both candidates on that.
I would have loved to hear Vance talk about how it seems like every fucking workers organization has struck under Biden that didn't strike at all under Trump. I would love to hear what Walt says back to that.
Gibbs and then Uni. Go ahead.
So I want to talk about three things real quick because I don't think we hadn't really talked about. First, since we talked about openings, they did talk about the dock workers thing right in the opening, very glossed over. But another thing they did right when they talked about the opening was saying, and I thought this was an interesting quote, Iran is 2 weeks away from a nuke. And that's been a little tagline I've heard. And then I saw Walz try to pin that on Trump. And I think Vance did an outstanding job of flipping that on Trump, on Vance and going, well, it's been Biden, Kamala, it's been in office for the last 3.5 years. Back to the football analogy. This is why the run game analogy is so apt. And with the ball control, that's an early touchdown, right? So we got that in. Then what he did is after they had polled, they said the number one issue that Americans nationwide have been pulling on is immigration. The Vance campaign, Vance did a very good job of tying every issue back to immigration, whether it's a dunk or not. He took this is where the football analogy comes in again. He took the long shots down the field, even when it didn't necessarily seem like it was a good idea, and it paid off several times because you could take the risk when you're ahead. And finally, this speaks to their broader strategy, because Wick, you mentioned this isn't applicable just to single game. It's talked about the season. They can do things out the season. Well, let me talk about a broader strategy that both Trump and Vance have now employed across.
Is this going to be football?
It's good. It's perfect. It's not. But they've also spoken to the broader strategy. And this is, I guess, where we can apply a football thing. Head coach comes in, and they've showed a strategy they want to go across several games. And that is that, hey, Kamala has been here 3.5 years already and done jack shit. And they've done it every single time they've had a closing. That way, no one's been able to answer it. And they put a nail in that every time. And that has resonated with the public, because when you go to the grocery store, you see prices higher than ever. You see homelessness higher than ever. You see all these other things, job market. And the question is, well, you know what? It isn't Trump's fault. We've had 3.5 years to fix this, and it's only gotten progressively worse. And it's a brilliant over-the-season strategy by the Trump-Vance campaign.
We'll see how it works out. We got a new guy in here, but I want to get to Uni next. So Uni next, and then Rampage Paul. We'll let him go, and then we're gonna end it because it's midnight and I gotta go. But just real quick, I've been looking at some polls, been getting some poll numbers. So we have my poll, right? The best poll, the most wonderful poll that we did, where people gave it to Vance pretty clearly, right? The betting odds seem to have given it to Vance pretty clearly. I personally think Vance clearly won. However, iCal Rich has linked me the CBS poll and the CNN poll. In the CBS poll, it was 41 Waltz, 42 Vance. So split decision. And in the CNN poll, Waltz was ahead. Waltz got it 53, Vance got it 47. So I think that while I think Vance took it away, I do wonder if it's simply going to be just a wash.
Wait, are those CBS and CNN viewers?
Yes.
They're a poll.
Yes.
Right.
It's a poll of their viewers?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, because if it's a poll of their
went
viewers,
to their website, and yes.
Okay, yeah. If it's
not
a
only
poll,
viewers, people who viewed it and then went to their website.
okay, yeah, that is. If that's the case, that's fucking useless. Like Newsmax put it like 98% Trump winning the last debate. Like CNN and CBS. I'll wait and for like
Trump
an
did
Ipsos.
win the last debate 98%, dude. What are you talking about?
Oh, apparently, I've been told that's wrong, that these are not polls from the website. They were polls with normal phone calls that they give as a flash poll at the end. I don't know. I haven't been given the methodology. So.
Yeah, maybe I'm wrong, but I know a lot of the polls that, I mean, you can literally go and click on, I think, the ABC and other news outlet polls. So maybe CNN and CBS do it differently, but... But yeah, if you look at the aggregates of all the polls, I mean, it's a clear Vance win. You can cherry pick two that probably find it otherwise, but I mean, the aggregates of polls, I mean,
I've only seen 3
everywhere.
Wait. Aggregates of what polls? Because I mean, if you're looking at instant poll, like somebody put up a poll on Twitter or whatever, you aggregating those aren't going to tell you anything. What you have to do is you have to look at scientific polls that weight their cohorts. And so far, there's only been 2. There's been the CBS one and the CNN one. The CNN one, the methodology hasn't changed for decades. They always do this poll the same way. They use SRSS to, which is a polling outfit, and they always ask the same questions in the same ways. And their poll showed. Their poll was the one that showed Obama losing in his first debate. Their poll is the one that showed Biden losing in his debate back in June. Same poll.
I don't think there was a single poll that showed Biden
so
winning.
Far, there's only 2 scientific polls. You could aggregate those 2 polls, I suppose. But I don't know what you mean, but I don't know of any other scientific polls that are out yet. There's probably about 5 or 6 that'll be out by Thursday.
Yeah, I mean,
but if you go to just like individual websites, sure.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna go, but then you guys started talking about polls.
Uni, go ahead.
Anyways, I wanted to go back to the censorship thing a while back. First of all, who's doing all the fucking censorship on Twitter? Like, people can't be progressive. A lot of people can't be progressive on Twitter without getting banned because Elon Musk has made the word cis a slur. It's not a slur.
It is a slur. It's a
shut
slur.
up. Shut up. Shut the fuck up.
It's a slur.
Anyway, shut the fuck up.
It's a slur.
Anyway. Be quiet.
Hey, really quick, I think. Hey,
it's Gibbs versus Lady Gibbs. Let's go.
It's
Gibbs
versus Hold on. No, let Uni Let Uni go. Let her have her say, and then we'll go to Rampage Paul, and then we're probably gonna wrap it up.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
on TikTok, you have to censor certain words. You can't say gay. You can say lesbian, but you can't say gay on TikTok because it's too controversial. Yes, there is some censorship like on other like platforms, but like a lot of that is like it's legitimately harmful stuff that can like lead to bad things happening. Just
gay
say
is legitimately harmful
shut up.
stuff.
No, I didn't say that. I said I'm
That's
talking
liberal
about
censorship, right? That's the Communist Party of China.
Yeah. So
I didn't say I was
It's
talking
not run by
about
the
I was
CCP
talking about
anymore.
I was talking about censorship of like more conservative opinions. But like I think that's wrong. Of having like
what was being referred to is about the pandemic. That's what they were talking. That's what Vance referred to. Vance referred to Americans should be able to go on and say their thoughts about the vaccine, about like whether or not children should wear masks. I think that was the exact example he gave. I said you should be able to do that.
If it's leading to misinformation, that's actually fucking dangerous.
No, but we were right. But children, like babies, didn't need to wear masks.
Wait! I don't even know if we can have this conversation because we're on Twitch. So I mean, maybe we should not have the conversation.
Jeb, it's not. Hey, Jeb, it's not. It doesn't even need to go down to this. This is why I think another thing as well, when it comes down to Vance winning, is you just saw tonight what the Trump campaign did when they start talking about democracy against Trump. They're not going to pull the Kamala slid in there because Biden dropped out. They're not doing that anymore. What they're going to do is they're going to talk about the censorship that happened under COVID, which is what Vance did tonight. And I think this is another reason that Democrats need to think about where
I don't think
this
that's going to win.
Wait, no. But this might resonate more with the layman or the people that don't agree with politics more than January 6th in democracy.
I disagree. I think that if I may, and then I'll let Uni finish, and then we'll let you go. But I hard disagree. I think that there's a lot of voters out there, right, who, for whatever reason, the democracy thing is the third most important thing that they have, and this is they're a toss up. They're like, well, I don't like a lot of Kamala's gun stuff, but I don't like
based on what
this other stuff. But this January 6th stuff is a red line.
Polling.
Hey, Wick, just to be clear, Jeb, just to be,
I've never seen
Wick, just to be clear,
I understand, but you also said earlier that you've seen a ton of aggregate polling about tonight that just doesn't exist.
No, I'm saying I'm aggregating. I'm saying if you look at the aggregate of the polls that have come out on most news sites, which I guess aren't scientific enough, most of them have Vance winning. I didn't say I looked at aggregate polling. I said 90% of the polls you'll see right now anywhere say Vance won. 90% of the people you talk to right now anywhere will say Vance won. But CNN and CBS and CNN seem to be the only outliers in that regard.
And Wick, just to be clear here,
they're the only two.
To be clear, hey, Jeb, or I'm sorry, Wick, just to be clear here, I am right on page with you. I think Donald Trump should never sit in office again. I think what he did in January 6th with the fake electors, all that shit is what I talk about all the time. I think it's one of the most atrocities we'll ever see, seriously. But when it comes down to when I'm seeing what these polls are coming about, when it talks about like the end question, not before the question before the closing, where people is going to probably resonate with you, the last thing you probably said. Okay, maybe some people say the first, but whatever. We'll say it's the last thing. The last question was talking about democracy. And Vance did a fantastic job tonight of pushing away the whole narrative of January 6th and talking about the censorship.
No. Here's the thing.
Absolutely correct.
Vance did a terrible job at it, but Walz did a worse job. That's the problem.
Maybe, yeah.
Vance didn't win this. Walz lost this.
No, they both were good. They both were good, and Vance was better.
I'm talking the last answer, specifically the last answer, not the debate overall. The debate overall clearly won, in my opinion. I think
the censorship thing.
That last answer with the censorship thing, I think Walz screwed it up.
Well, but it's real obvious with the censorship thing. Whenever we just had Zuckerberg admit to being in cahoots with the Biden administration on this, right?
Okay, hold on. He said he got.
Hold on, Jeb.
You got pressured from both sides. Jeb, you got pressured from both sides.
About COVID?
Hold on, Jeb. No.
Not specifically about COVID.
He specifically said that he got forced by the government, basically, and he was in cahoots with them to do this. Now, someone brought up Elon Musk, our Lord and Savior on X. He basically is the only free haven for speech now on the major places. So, yeah, I disagree with all this. And it's pretty clear that the Dems, whenever they're pressuring Zuckerberg and others to censor any kind of misinformation that they deem or any hate speech they deem, that, it's a fumble and a big one, and it was an amazing tactic by Vance.
So we do have a focus group.
He cuts me off when I drop the win.
We have a CNN focus group for what that's worth, right?
Nothing.
A decided Michigan voter says that he chose to vote for Kamala Harris tonight after J.D. Vance's damning answer on January 6th stuck with him.
Oh, no.
And this is a quote. I don't think I can trust someone with my vote if they're not going to respect it.
Hey, it might show the opposite of what I just said.
A strong
what do you have?
Wait. That seems like an oddly philosophically framed way to answer for some guy.
That's hilarious.
I'm not going to vote for somebody who refuses to respect my vote. Are you sure?
It's also
pretty big story in Michigan.
I've heard Jeb say the same thing.
Hold on, even left-leaning side.
Jeb's a more philosophical guy.
I will not be able to respond. It's one dude in a focus group of 50. It's a 2% figure. Even if your figure is 100% correct and totally scientifically sound, it's
you see the whole focus group.
10% of the whole group.
No, wait, there's not even 10. There's 7. There's 7 folks.
It's incredibly scientific. A sample size of 7, Jeff.
You quoted one person out of 50. You quoted one person that said that moved the needle for them, right?
It's essentially a study, really.
Stop interrupting me. Did 7 people say that quote in unison, or did one person say that quote?
No, Wick is saying, I think if I'm not misunderstanding what Wick is saying, he's saying there's 7 people in the focus group.
Yeah.
Undecided.
Let me finish my thought. Oh my
God.
God.
Not 50.
Okay, sure. So even at best, if it's 100%, if that one person is 100% reflective of the U.S. voter base, we're talking less than 20% of people were convinced by that answer, and that was Walz's best moment in the debate.
Hold on. Here's the thing. It doesn't have to sway everyone. It has to sway a couple thousand in Pennsylvania, a couple thousand in Arizona, a couple thousand in Georgia.
Yeah, but then how many were swayed by Vance absolutely dog-walking him the entire rest of the debate?
Again,
that's what we're talking
the median
about.
Unswayed voter cares about that at all.
He also lied about standing for free speech, by the way.
Stop interrupting me because I want to touch on that. There are no polls that show democracy as a top 3 issue for people. There's one poll that shows it in the top 5, and it's number 5. That's what I wanted to jump in. I knew everyone was going to jump in. Hold on. Inflation and immigration are like 80% of what people give a fuck about right now.
Yes.
And then healthcare is the third, not democracy.
I also want to add. In this poll, abortion is combined with healthcare.
Can't we all just agree tonight that what we saw tonight is the main reason why we should never see Trump in politics again? Like actual debate. Actual fucking
Trump or Kamala.
That's what I came here to say. I only wanted to say one thing.
Agree on that at least.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing. This is the reason I came in, is because I think that this is something that we used to talk about every time there was a debate, and that was the expectations game. Now, I just showed you 2 polls that showed that it's a very, very close debate. One in one direction and one in the other direction. Very close debate for both of those polls. But that's not what really matters, in my opinion. What matters, in my opinion, is the expectations game. And the fact is, the expectations for Walz was sky high, and the expectation for Vance was very low. So I think at best Walz has just at best maintained where he was, which I think is why the polls were so close. But I think anybody who had this cartoonish idea of the way in which Vance talks, and a lot of what we've seen of him up now is cherry pick stuff from the past, and now he was able to we were able to see him for an hour or two, and he didn't look like the cartoon that the memes were showing up until now. And so just strictly on the expectations game, I think Vance won. And really, honestly, that's the most important aspect.
It's almost like the opposite of Kamala, right? It's almost like Kamala.
Neither won, but Walz lost. That's...
I would argue that Walz won on points, but
I
would be biased in that.
To say that Vance didn't look great in this debate is it's so biased, man. He looked great. He got caught off balance on almost no issues other than the very last one.
We're gonna give Uni last word, and then we're gonna go because it's midnight and I'm an old man. Okay.
Yeah. Anyways, I was talking about fudge. I didn't know that they were talking about the 2020 and COVID pandemic and free speech, but I do not think that you should have the right to spew misinformation on the internet. No, that's not okay. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Tell you what, Uni.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about moderation in general, or at least censorship in general, I should say, I would love to set something up about that specifically. DM me. We'll figure that out.
All right.
What about the compliments? Critical thinking veteran. Nice to see you. You have the best wolves in the business. Nice to see you, buddy. Okay, we're going to end it there. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about the state of the race with some folks. That'll be fun. And then Thursday, we're going to have a debate on the filibuster. So if you are very anti-filibuster, reach out to me. We got some filibuster defenders. I need some people who don't like the filibuster, who are willing to throw down on Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern. Contact me and let me know. But right now, we are going to have to go. I love you all. Like the stream. Subscribe. Bye-bye. Bye. Okay.
Thanks, Wick. I appreciate it, brother.
That was fun. No problem.
There you go.
Yeah, that was fun.
Oh, it's fun.
I already contacted you on
Hey,
that.
Gibbs, you're still a little bitch, though. Okay.
Hey, listen, Paul.
I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
Bye,
What you
Wick.
got? Yeah. All right. That'll be good.
Catch you later.
You be too. Are we just gonna hang out? I'm down to talk for another 30 minutes, 25 minutes.
I never get to see Lactoid after hours. This is crazy.
You're muted, Jeb.
Bro, I was up past 1 talking to GSU Gambit last night, and I'm fucking exhausted.
Oh god, GSU, damn it! I hate that guy.
Wait, what? Why?
He's all right.
I don't hate him, but every single time, I don't know. It was 3 years ago. Maybe he's changed.
I feel like he's like mostly on.
Never underestimate the grudge ability. Holy shit!
What did you guys argue about?
Oh, yesterday we argued about
about to say something crazy. You're about to say something crazy.
I'm about to say something crazy. Yeah, Corey, you know Corey, right? Corey was saying, "Hey, corporal punishment for children is bad," and GSU Gambit did
Corey
not.
Campbell.
GSU Gambit did not agree, and we had an argument as to Corey Gamble. So GSU Gambit has the belief that corporal punishment is the way to save the Black community. And so that was sort of the debate we were having, because I was saying, hey, the research all seems to indicate that corporal punishment for children is bad. And he said that all the research was bad.
That's confusing.
That's cool.
I feel like the Black community has, like, I would say, disproportionately utilized corporal punishment. So if there's like
not
an issue
enough,
with the Black
though,
community,
according to GSU Gambit, not enough.
What is
If
that
only they
corporal-
did it more, then it would be
What exactly is corporal punishment?
like spanking and smacking your kid.
smacking your kid, etc.
Yeah, he's pro hitting kids.
And as we
He's
know,
pro hitting kids. Yeah.
and as we know, we turn out fine. Not.
Yeah, right.
Just
That's what
saying.
I was saying. Is I feel like Black community. If there was a community that would be reflective of the benefits of corporal punishment, it would probably be the Black community, and that doesn't pan out. It doesn't seem like.
No,
so.
That's why I think CIA checks are real, man.
Jeb on there.
Sometimes you see people arguing stuff, and I'm like, yo, that check is probably crazy.
no. What I'm saying, I disagree with Gambit. I feel like Gambit's own argument kind of eats itself, because I feel like the Black community disproportionately uses corporal punishment, and it has not worked out. Like,
Well, no,
I feel
but
like
the argument that he was using is, he'll admit this, right? But he'll say that, like, when you look at all the other factors like poverty, like generational trauma, etc., like it would be worse if they weren't doing the corporal punishment that they were now, and that the only way to solve it is to increase the amount of corporal punishment. And so I was able to find a study actually controlling it by race and income, and he said he'll read it and get back to me. So we'll see.
Which he will.
Which he will. I totally have confidence that he will, for sure.
You know?
Poverty and generational trauma does not give you an excuse to be an asshole.
Well, and part of generational trauma
Blackwood.
comes with getting beat by your parents. That causes generational trauma. Like
Yeah,
generational trauma,
I'm saying-
people.
You guys should debate him on this. He's very aggressive on this topic.
I'm saying you
Blackwood, I
have
wish I was on
personal
that panel.
responsibility. You do not not have personal responsibility just because you have trauma. That's it.
I don't know who this guy is.
I wish I was
bet
on
you
that panel.
I'm sure he's a good guy, though.
Oh no, he's a really chill guy. He does have opinions though, where it's like you do a little bit of a double take, but he's a good guy.
It's like me. It's like me.
Like everybody on here, okay? It's like a typical streamer.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like everybody on there, out of nowhere, you're like, I can't believe this person said that take. But whatever. What are you gonna do about it? You want to play
other than me, because I have all the best takes and they're all right. So
yeah,
No,
Jeb's
see,
like
how
60%. I'm sorry, 48% right.
How you get him to actually start thinking about that take
I'm not
is
a
asking
streamer. I'm just scared.
is you ask him if they should start using whips instead of belts.
Oh my god!
I was not going to bring that
don't
up.
Do that. Don't
yeah, because he'll get banned.
Promise.
Yeah, we'll get banned.
Whoever's channels you're on, don't do that. Even metaphorically, or you can do it metaphorically speaking behind the scenes, but don't do that on stream.
I don't know.
Wait,
that's a tough conversation.
If I'm remembering correctly, GSU's homophobic. Is he? Like
I don't know who this guy is. I don't know him, honestly.
But one of the issues is like a lot of that conversation comes down to like psychological research, and a lot of people just pretend psychology is not a legitimate science because it understands its own limitations and will disclose those limitations, and so they will use that as a way to say like, oh look, even they know the shit they're saying isn't correct. And it's like
any study you can find limitations.
Yeah, there's
and this is literally what's happening.
There's legitimate psychological theory to suggest that if you are part of a marginalized community, corporal punishment is worse, because if you're trained to think the world around you, if you're trained to think the world around you is so hostile toward you, and then you go home and your home is hostile toward you as well, you're almost putting your child in a situation where the only thing they can do is rebel and behave in a way that is antisocial, because they think everyone, including their family around them, is trying to hurt them.
Look, I probably agree with like just.
I'm a psychology major. I'm studying this shit right now.
I probably agree with GSU Gambit on like 50% of topics, probably.
What?
But some of those topics he's pretty.
I'm 23.
Interesting on.
23.
Yeah, Rampage is 22. So that's...
I'm not 22. I'm 32.
Wait,
look a day over 40.
How old did you think I was? What?
Well, you said you started studying psychology. I don't know. I thought you
Yeah.
might have, you know, like if you're like 19 or something. I don't know. I was gonna say, bro, get rid. Well, this is just my own bias, but you could do whatever you want pursuing college. I won't say anything because I don't bring bad juju. Okay.
No, I'm somebody who's, I don't know, I care a lot about the mental well-being and understanding why people do what they do, which is psychological. And I have a wide variety of psychological stuff myself. So learning about this helps me understand myself as well. So it's very,
absolutely.
It's very
Have they trained you on the Myers-Briggs? Do they do that?
Myers-Briggs. Yes. And literally every fucking psychology class
I know.
that I take makes me take the Myers-Briggs test.
It's a pseudoscience, by the way, just so we're.
It seems like pseudoscience.
What is this? I don't know what it is. What is
It's
it?
a Facebook personality quiz, but it's labeled as some psychologist came up with it one day.
Yeah, all those personality quizzes are a pseudoscience. I don't know why.
Yeah,
but you know what?
No, not all of them. Top Big 5 personality traits that actually has some real science behind it.
Yeah, it does.
Which one's the big 5? I use strength finding because I'm a Christian.
Yeah, it's like
man,
agreeableness,
okay?
neuroticism, and then there's like.
Oh, the JBP one. Hell yeah! I use strength.
Wait, link this to me. I need to take
Christian
this
man.
on
Okay.
But the Myers-Briggs one, like I took it and like I got my results and I'm like, it looks like I'm just autistic with ADHD. That's what I am. I don't know.
I don't know about the Myers-Briggs one. Given that one, it didn't tell me about my autism status, but I'm sure I would have learned something. For me, it told me I was a debater, and I was, for one, shocked.
Oh wait, I think I did take this one, and that's what it said for me too. By the way, I'm pretty sure. Is that the same? Where it was? Is that I was a debater? Is that the same test?
Yeah, I got.
Things aren't looking good for Twitch streamers. Oh shit,
not looking good.
Not looking
Jeb,
good.
are you on next week? Did anyone send you a DM yet?
To be clear, and Jeb will say this because we do a podcast together. I'm not really a debater. I don't find any. Okay. So don't get me wrong. There are things that Jeb and I absolutely 100% agree with. I think debating though throws entire like advancing the conversation completely out the fucking window.
Except when I do it because I'm the best at it, and
you got to debate him on whether or not debating is cool. Come on, Jesus.
No. True, by the way. But no, like obviously when we go open, Jeb, on the podcast, that's completely different. You know, like if you guys want to come in here and fucking scream at our heads, it's literally advertised as that. Come yell at us, you know, and then obviously the other person tries to moderate when you're getting yelled at. You know, if I said some retarded comments and you came in here, Lactor, Jeb would try to, moderate between us two if we're like screaming over each other. But overall,
you don't want me moderating a debate between you and Lactoid, dude.
My only interaction with anything, by the way, is debating. Right? my job is debating, and then I get done with work, and then I come on here and debate people. And
I'm not a good
I think
debater.
debating
I
is
just like
fine.
having having conversations, and I like arguing with people who have, in my opinion, dumb opinions.
Well,
that's debating. There you go.
Hey, no, I disagree. Wait, hold on. I disagree because I brought Jeb in
You disagree? Are you debating me on this?
No, I disagree with her, so I'm debating her on this.
Okay,
just like people, so like people in general, like, oh, we just want to have like conversation and not really debate. Not fucking true, because guess what? When that actually happens, your community freaks out on you, okay? Saying, why didn't you push back on this? Why didn't you debate him on that? X, Y, and Z. And the next thing
he's getting PTSD from every conversation we've ever had because I'm so convincing. And then his
it's not even that you're so convincing. It's just like we're like having a conversation about something, and I say, I agree here, or we don't agree, and we talk about it for like 5-10 minutes, and then we move on to the next thing. And it's like, oh, well, why didn't you keep going with that conversation? There was no more. This show isn't about debating. The show is about having a conversation. That's
what
all.
Were you asking me about?
Oh no, see if you got a DM from Danabo about next week. So because Dylan's still looking for I think it's like undecided or third party people. But I don't know if that's even going to be a thing.
No, because they know I'm decided. I'm just decidedly not voting for president.
Oh, your couch. Got it. Or couch, at least blank on that aspect.
Yeah,
I'm
couch fucker. No,
and by the way, this is the difference. By the way, this is the difference what I have against Tiberius. You know Tiberius, right, Lactoid?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I go after him for this.
I'm sort of undecided.
Funny, we go after for the opposite reasons. Funny enough.
What states do you guys live in? Sorry,
I live in Illinois. I'm in Chicago.
And you not voting doesn't matter because California is going to go blue.
Well, no,
that's
so
the whole point.
I'm in a
voting.
swing state.
What Rampage is?
I am
gonna vote.
Wait, hold on. So Lacto, you're the people that when anytime that like us in like deep red and blue states get yelled at for, you're the fucker that we gotta convince.
Yeah.
I'm dead serious. Like, if you guys don't live in swing states, like my vote matters than all of you, like more than all of yours combined by times infinity. It's just the way it is.
I'm in California, so
Hold on. But
none of your votes matter.
This is what Rampage was taking too long to say. It was Tiberius is legitimately staying home and not voting at all. Everybody's vote matters, but
his vote doesn't
presidential vote. The presidential vote doesn't matter as much as all the others, even if you do live in a swing state, because 90% of your life in terms of what's affected on the ballot is affected by propositions and local government, dude.
Yep.
If you can,
that
stuff is always in a
I vote in every
to be
election.
fair, to be fair, depending on how your ballot's structured, I totally understand sitting it out.
Yeah, I
like,
agree with that because
yeah.
Tiberius, there are no props in his state for some reason. Like they have a legal issue with ballot initiatives, I guess, which is wild. But California has like 12 props every election, and you can watch California move from like New York, where it's basically like an experimental ground where we'll vote for anything the Democrats pitch, to over the last 2 election cycles, we voted to bring back cash bail. We voted against affirmative action. We voted against rent control. Like California is starting to move in significant ways because people like me aren't fleeing the state. We're sticking around and trying to affect
I
change.
disagree with you on this. It has nothing to do with you not moving. It has to deal with, I think, in general, the country is losing progressivism on the left. Progressive left is lost. It's lost. It seems to be a fucking loser over and over again.
It's getting worse. It's getting worse.
I thought it was a libertarian. You're not gonna pick that Kool-Aid on him.
Worse.
The Democrat Party has moved left, and so what?
Look at Kamala.
Yeah, look at her.
What do you mean? She's trying to throw $25,000 to anybody trying to buy a house.
She's not a progressive left.
$6,000.
Wait, hold on. Let me just point like the dichotomy here. In 2008, Obama's first term, he was opposed to gay marriage. Kamala Harris is suggesting free gender surgery for illegal inmates.
What?
This is a massive shift to the left.
Wasn't that just like a question on a survey?
It was from the ACLU, and she repeated it later in an interview.
This was like ACLU that happened like 2019 and 2020.
Yeah, the last time she had a primary.
No.
It's one game ago.
Okay, do you think if you asked her right now, she would say the same thing?
Yes, she has to.
She would believe
No, she has to. She has to.
Nah, hold on, wait. You guys are giving Kamala Harris way too much credit. She would say, well, first off, just remember, I'm from a middle-class family, okay?
Yeah. My bad. You're right, Joe. Yeah.
And this is why we need the opportunity economy.
Yes.
Wait,
okay. But afterwards, like when she gets done saying that,
Lewis and I are on opposite sides here.
No, but I think Joe's right. She would do that. But like, let's assume that she would answer the question.
No, she wouldn't.
No, but she could not walk that back, and here's why. Here's why she answered it in 2019 in the ACLU, and she's backed it up already. Hold on. Let me follow through with it. Yes, let me follow through with this.
Immigrants and presidents get.
I can explain why. Okay, so not only did she say this on the 2019 ACLU survey, she said it again in an interview. And the problem is, if she walks it back, this means that she has to admit one of two things: A, that trans care is not health care, which you can't do, or B, that prisoners don't deserve health care. One of those has to be false.
True. That's not true. She can literally come out and she can literally say these people aren't actual citizens of our country.
No, she cannot say that with her voting demographic. She cannot say that.
Yeah, her voting demographic.
Because here's the counterpoint.
Her border stance.
The border stance is different because the question is gonna be, so detained migrants don't deserve health care?
Yep. You're going to imprison these people and force them not to.
They don't deserve necessary healthcare, life-saving healthcare. They don't deserve it.
Okay. I see what you mean. Just because you have to say like trans health or
they're locked into saying it's life-saving healthcare.
But overall, if she answers the question saying like, I don't think that people should be able to have transgendered surgeries that are illegal immigrants.
Why?
Okay.
No, the question is why.
Hold on. Hey, really quick. You're right. The answer is why, but there isn't probably going to be a why after answering that question.
No,
That's another thing as well.
She's going to get grilled by her own community because then the question becomes in people's minds.
She's
why
been getting
aren't
grilled
you
on her own community? Look at Joe Lewis right now. She's been getting grilled on her own community forever.
Well, hold on, Joe. I wouldn't. Joe Lewis, would you consider yourself to be part of Kamala Harris's community? I wouldn't say that.
Yeah, I'm a Kamala Harris negative fan.
I'm saying
a negative fan. You hear that?
I'm saying of a progressive left, like the demographic.
Okay,
of like
I'm sorry.
I have no idea where this is going.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but like again,
wait, Joe, the
trans community is like pretty loud on social media.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, they're pretty loud on social media.
I'm pretty staunchly a leftist. I'm not progressive.
Yes, they're pretty loud on social media, and again, if there's an indication that they don't believe this is healthcare, she loses their vote.
Before we get into this autistic conversation, because I've been on panels with Joe Lewis.
She has never walked it back.
No, really quick.
We're going to debate about Joe Lewis's title
every once in a while. No. Well, I need to make sure I'm not misrepresenting when I talk about him, right? So when you say Joe Lewis, you're a staunch leftist, but you're completely against Kamala Harris. What do you mean by this?
I think that at best she is just another example of the liberal establishment. Sure, that's going to sway to certain things, like posturing to LGBT rights, posturing towards trans rights, posturing towards any topic that you can think of. But by and large, whatever the popular narrative on that topic is, that's what she's going to stand on. I don't think she's
do you not think that her and her party have moved these issues that you brought up that they don't really actually, they just say they care about? Do you think that they've been growing towards the direction of getting more? Hold on.
I would posit like how, like you can give an example. Like what's an example that comes to mind to you?
I mean, look at what we always came down to, like in general, when it was like a gay marriage. Gay marriage got legalized in 2014, and look at the conversation we're having right now.
Trans surgeries and for inmates.
Okay, but
exactly.
So connect that to me. How does gay marriage connect to trans rights?
Look at how far we've gone and grown as a community when it comes to these social issues of conversation. Who was the party that did this? It wasn't the Republicans. It was the Kamala Harris party. It was the Joe Bidens. It was the Democrats that you, for some reason, you say you're a staunch leftist that you completely disagree with for some weird reason.
Leftists are Democrats. Leftists are like left, like Hassan left.
Wait, but what does that mean? So you just support?
That's what I'm trying to parse out what you're
Joe
trying
Lewis
to look for.
I don't know. I'm trying to figure out you, Joe.
He's trying to put you in a box, Joe. He's got like these preconceived boxes, and you don't fit in one of them.
Yes, kind of. So like when I have a conversation, I can say basically like tonight. Unfortunately, granted, we were behind the scenes, which is great. But like today, I said, "Oh, Joe and I are on the same team." We're obviously not on the same team. I'm like a center-left Democrat, duder. Right? You know,
yeah,
I thought we were on the same team. I thought we were on the same
center-left
team
Democrat.
in general.
That's original.
Center-left is crazy, but that's all good.
I know, original, but overall, like, hey, guess what? I'm a moderate. That's what I am. Okay. But I again, I've said it on Wick's stream, and I'll say it again tonight. If we had somebody that was like a Chris Christie or a Nikki Haley, even probably not a Ron DeSantis, but we'll see. We would have to see. I know, unbelievable, huh?
The same conversation. I don't get where the Chris Christie and Nikki Haley combo comes in, other than the fact that they both didn't like Trump.
I mean, Nikki Haley is a straight up war hawk. She'll be like, oh, like for that first question about Iran, she'll be like, I'll write on them. I'll sign the missiles myself. Let's get
damn right, and we need her.
No. See, like this is where like we do actually disagree here, Joe, because like in general, do I think what's happening in Gaza is terrible? Yes, of course. Blah 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 bullshit.
Blah 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 bullshit.
It's not the only thing that
it is blah blah. It is blah 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 bullshit.
Listen to him, Joe. Blah 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 bullshit. That's what he thinks about.
No,
Gaza.
it is that. No, it is that because at the end of the day, we should, as Americans, be supporting like something like what's happening with like look what happened today with fucking Iran. Like, do we think that this is something that we shouldn't like help them out with? It's ridiculous.
Help who?
Yes,
out with?
should we put like Israel out with with the enemies, like literally shooting 200 fucking missiles into their goddamn country?
When I'm dealing with left wingers, I never know. Do they want to help Iran or do they want to help Israel? I'm not sure. So I just have to ask.
No, I'm not. Hey, Lactoid. I just want to say something. I sound retarded sometimes, but I'm not retarded overall. Okay, so. But like, so like what I think that we should have done with like Gaza and stuff like that, there's atrocities on both sides, right? Hamas is terrible. They should absolutely have the right to get rid of them. But what they did in Gaza seems tragic. The entire fucking place looks like it's in rubbles. Not cool, not good. And we should stand up to shit like this, but we should not even have a question of standing up for Israel when they have 200 rockets shot into their fucking country. This is crazy.
Okay. I'm still confused, but that did not help. Like, so let me, maybe there's like a policy that I can figure out. Do you think the ACA is like a step forward towards what like leftists want?
So I think the ACA, when it comes down to healthcare overall, my personal opinion is that the ACA making it better, more like basically cheaper and competitive with private insurance is probably the best route for America overall when it comes to actually making healthcare prices go down. Jeb and I yell at each other about this all the fucking time on our fucking podcast.
Me and you yell at each other about this all the time.
Yeah,
too.
we yell about it too. But overall, when it comes down to things like if we were able to have like a public option that is basically competitive, like for instance, I have HMO Blue Cross Blue Shield. Okay, if we
you and help them at healthcare monopoly, I understand.
No. Really quick, here. Let me finish my point. So that Blue Cross Blue Shield, Blue Cross Blue Shield HMO, I get charged like something like $200 a month for it. So it's like $2,400 a year, something right around there. It's a little less than that. Okay. And I have like good things. I got to go to the doctor. Obviously, you pay $20. I go to like a specialist, it's $40. If I go to the emergency room, it's $100 and I have a deductible of like $5K. Okay. Oh, like long story short, if the ACA could make something like what I have, where it costs like $250 a month, and it's basically the same exact thing, this is where we start seeing prices go down in the public market. This is where we start seeing things go down and the market actually gets fixed. That's my personal opinion on it.
We saw the opposite.
No, I know that you think it's the opposite, but overall, if you're thinking that I'm going to
say we saw the opposite.
Yeah, no, I don't think like healthcare got way more expensive. Yeah,
yeah, like that's the part that's confusing to me because it seems like under the ACA, the only thing that it really does is that you can get healthcare if you work. And the easiest way to get healthcare is through the employee mandate through the ACA. That's not exactly progress. It's just kicking the can to saying that it's now employers' responsibility to give healthcare. And again,
I agree. Wait. I agree with all of you guys here. But what I'm saying, if there's like an actual option that has good healthcare that is affordable, we will see prices drop. ACA right now isn't there yet.
Yeah, but
because it's an example. That's an example of a liberal policy. Right?
Yeah, Rampage. The issue is hold on. You are talking about, you're kind of like hinting at the value of moderation and moderate policy, but you sort of cherry picked the two worst examples of moderate positions where they led us into the worst possible situation where you're like, yeah, Israel is the worst issue to be moderate on. You either think Palestinians deserve the borders that they want, or you believe that they don't because they lost wars and they unprovoked attacked Israel and killed citizens and targeted citizens. And so if Israel comes back and turns their shit into rubble, yeah, that's exactly what we would do if a bunch of fucking paragliders swooped into fucking the northern
San Diego
or California.
San Diego,
we would fucking vaporize their entire town. Like, you can't be moderate in that position. And so lefties probably have a more respectable position of like, either Gaza's right about that and that attack was justified because the settlements are enough justification for that, and historical oppression and whatever, or people on my side are right about it, which is that was a purposeful attack on civilians, and fuck you, we're going to vaporize every single building you've ever, we could even see one of your names in. And then with healthcare, the moderate position on healthcare has led to the United States spending more on healthcare than every other developed nation in the world, while getting sort of good results in in-hospital care, but bad results in a lot of other ways, and just spending way too much on healthcare.
Basically, just cost.
We could be spending less if we just said we're not going to spend taxpayer dollars on healthcare. You're just going to have to pay for people to save your life because that's inherently valuable. And that's not terrible. It makes sense to pay people to save your life. Saving your life seems like a pretty valuable thing to me, and you're having to exploit somebody's labor.
I'll let you guys go at it really quick. But to answer the question, I think what Joe was asking here is the answer is I'm not for single payer healthcare. I think that's where you were kind of getting at.
But that's the issue.
I think that's what Joe was kind of
the thing that
you should either have government healthcare or have private healthcare, but this middling thing has been proven to just be awful.
Yeah, and my point is generally is that like the things that I would say are like leftist approaches are not things that exist in the Kamala Harris campaign. Where like when I hear her talking about houses, right? I'm like, why doesn't she just rally towards the repeal of the Faircloth Amendment? She could do that and not lose any voters.
What's
And
the Faircloth Amendment?
The Faircloth Amendment prevents the Department of Housing and Urban Development from using funds to build public housing.
Okay, well, I think she talked about in the debate and also the last interview she did talking about, I don't know if this is the same thing, but like in general with like zoning laws, she was talking about like changing those. Does that not
No,
fall
so
into what you're talking about?
the Faircloth Amendment was
You
an
can't
amendment.
change zoning laws.
Well,
she can campaign for it and try to get. She can campaign for it and try to get states to rally around her for it, right? You know.
But my position on that when it comes to housing, just as a distinction, is that she could easily just use as part of her housing platform, right? She's talking about, I'm going to build all of these homes, and then one of the things that I need to make sure that I'm able to get done in my first 100 days is to repeal the Faircloth Amendment. I would vote for her immediately if she did that.
But do you think that okay, so maybe this is the way for housing, okay? Maybe this is the direct route. But do we think that something like as simple as that would literally fix our entire housing issue?
The Department of Housing and Urban Development cannot use funding for the development of public housing units. If you're trying to say, hey, I'm going to build...
Okay, I guess let me be more frank. Do we think that the issue is public housing units or just the supply of housing in general?
If you are looking to have a goal, which is what, 2 million houses was her goal, right?
3 million.
3 million? I think it's reasonable to say that there's things that she can use as part of that platform to be like, hey, these are certain roadblocks ahead of me. One of those roadblocks is the restrictions that HUD has when it comes to building homes. So
isn't this something that's politically dumb to say though? Like
no.
She can come out. Wait, no, it is though, because she can come out and she can say, guess what? I want to have my goal is to build 3 million more housing, aka knowing that it is the supply of housing that's the issue. She can then come out after she wins presidency and say, you know what, we should probably talk about this, what you brought up, with like the public housing. On top of this,
the 3 million houses.
I think that I think that like when you bring in something where it's like I want to do 3 million houses plus this. Have a good night, Lacto. I love you, buddy.
Have a good night.
Overall, when you like start like putting a bunch of layers on.
Thank you guys for tuning in to today's episode of Lactoid TV. For those of you who gave bit subs, really appreciate it. For those of you who just tuned in, really appreciate it too. Thanks for the good chat as always, and I will see you guys next time. We'll raid on out into Gibbs, and hopefully he's got good content, but he usually does, so he should be good.
You know what I mean?
You may
I'm not saying you're not